G'day everyone, Rune here. Now you may be wondering, Rune, why are you putting all of the chapters of your Naruto What If together when you haven't even finished the story yet? Well, I'll tell you, curious viewer, it is because this story is getting a reboot. Even more exciting, this reboot is going to be a group effort, as it is going to be a collab between myself and the always entertaining plus Ultraman.
You better believe it. Rune and I are teaming up to once again take on the story of Naruto from her channel as well as the story of Satsuki from my channel. We're already pretty deep into the planning of both stories in order to make them both upgrades and evolutions of the original concepts and ideas explored in our original takes. And we'll be starting this multi-part collaboration sometime later this year. Hence why it's important you all as viewers have easy access to all the original Naruto and Satsuki runs. And is why after this video you can go over to my channel and watch the full Satsuki movie. So make sure you subscribe to both of us with notifications on so you know when those new ones drop. Leave a like and a comment, then grab a snack, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Chapter 1 The Lost Kitten. We start the story way back when Naruto, or rather Naruko, was still very young. She is sitting at her usual swing watching the other children play with a dead look in her eyes. Just like every other day, she's all alone. That is, until a girl with blonde hair steps in front of her and gets right up in her face. Naruko flinches back in shock and fear, expecting the girl to attack her or something. However, the girl gives Naruko a long, calculating look before smiling. "You really do look like a lost kitten." Naruko blinks in confusion. The word sounded like something that could be an insult, but the girl didn't say it like it was. She almost sounded friendly. "I'm Yamanaki Ino. And you?" "Naruko. Uzumaki Naruko." "Naruko-chan, huh? Why are you sitting over here all by yourself? It's gotta be boring, right?" Naruko looks away. Now she got it. This girl wanted her to say out loud that no one wanted anything to do with her. However, before she could tell Ino to go away, she says something that completely shocks her. "Come on, you can play with us." Now, I should explain why Ino is reaching out to Naruko in this timeline. Well, there is precedence for her to do this. In the original timeline, Ino had actively decided to reach out to Sakura and befriend her when the Pinkette was being bullied. So I think Ino at this point in her life is just someone that wants to go and befriend those that others pick on. As for why she's doing that here, but not in the original timeline, well, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a kid that doesn't go through that ooh cuties phase. So it's possible that she would befriend Naruko like she had Sakura, which is what's happening here. Shocked, completely speechless, but feeling hope blossom for the first time in a long while, Naruko accepts, following Ino to a small group consisting of a boy with dark purple hair, a girl with light brown hair, and a girl with pink hair. Fear overcoming her, Naruko hides behind Ino, who calls out to the others. Seeing that she's come back, the three ask where she'd run off to which Ino states that she'd gone to get another player for their game. At this, she nudges Naruko out from behind her slightly, eliciting looks of shock and fear from the boy and brunette, and a look of surprised confusion from the Pinkette. Ino introduces Naruko to the three, but the only one who introduces themselves back is the Pinkette, whose name is Haruno Sakura. The other two just stare at Naruko before hastily stammering out some excuse and running away. Ino huffs in annoyance, wondering out loud about what had gotten into them. Naruko, beginning to think that this was a bad idea and blaming herself for Ino's friends running off, apologizes for scaring away her friends and suggests that she should just leave. She's already caused enough trouble. But Ino shoots this down, saying that Naruko is about as scary as a kitten, and if they're scared of her, then they're a couple of wimps. Besides, she told Naruko that they were going to play together, and that's exactly what they're going to do. It's at this point that Sakura pipes up and says that she doesn't think Naruko is scary at all, and that she'd be sad if Naruko refused to play with them now. Giving a small, genuine smile, Naruko agrees to play. And so, a bond of friendship is formed between Naruko, Sakura, and Ino. As a result, Naruko would have a support base that isn't purely dependent on Iruka or the third Hokage. Ino constantly referring to her as a kitten would also result in that becoming her nickname. Now, would Sakura and Ino's parents try to separate their daughters from Naruko? Well, I think yes and no. Sakura's mum and dad seem to be very friendly and open people, so even though they would be worried about their daughter being around a Jinchuriki, they would still give Naruko a chance. Inno's parents might be a bit more hesitant, but after hearing Inno refer to her as a frightened kitten and meeting her themselves, they would relax a little. During their time together, Inno and Sakura would also find out about Naruko living on her own, and after seeing how tiny the place is, beg their parents to let Naruko stay with them. However, the parents are sadly forced to explain to their daughters that Naruko is a charge of the village, and they literally can't take her in. When the two girls ask why, the parents simply say that they'll tell them when they're older. Naruko does meet Hinata in this timeline and stand up for her. However, unlike the original timeline, this time Naruko has Sakura and Inno backing her up, so she doesn't get beaten up. She also invites Hinata to play with them, wanting to extend the same compassion that Inno had shown her. Hinata, for her part, does agree to play, but due to her timidity and home life, she doesn't spend as much time with them as she'd like. So, instead of them becoming a group of 4, it's more of a trio with a 4th friend that shows up sometimes. As for Ninja School, I think Naruko would do a bit better in this timeline, because she has Inno and Sakura there to help her understand stuff that she doesn't understand, and that the teachers refuse to help her with. But this only marginally helps, as Inno and Sakura are still only students themselves and don't necessarily know how to explain things to someone else. Also, Naruko still has trouble with chakra control, and as such, it's near impossible for her to keep up. Sakura and Inno, not knowing about the Nine Tails, chalk this up to simply a natural disadvantage that Naruko has. Now, we come to 2 important questions regarding this new backstory. Would Sakura and Inno still have their falling out over their feelings for Sasuke, and does Naruko have feelings for him herself? Well, in the case of Naruko, I'm going to say yes, she does have a small crush on him. Similar to the original timeline, she feels a kind of solidarity towards him, due to them both having been left alone in the world. However, unlike Sakura and Inno, she's not confident enough to act on her feelings or even consider doing so. This decision of inaction is only reinforced when she finds out about Sakura and Inno both having their own crushes on the Uchiha, not wanting to risk losing her friends. With Sakura and Inno, I'm going to say that they do still have their falling out. They're still very young, and if their friendship in the original timeline wasn't enough to stop them from making this stupid decision, I don't think Naruko would change anything. Sakura and Inno still maintain their friendships with Naruko individually, but they never spend time together as a trio anymore. Furthermore, they don't really spend time with Naruko at school anymore because, despite being rivals with each other, they don't want to put Naruko in an awkward position by making her pick who to spend time with at the academy. This, unsurprisingly, backfires, as it makes Naruko think that they just don't want to be seen with her at the academy. At this point, the only one who comes near her at the academy is Hinata. It's not the same as having her 2 best and first friends with her, but it's at least a lot better than the complete isolation she had before. This all compounds on her, making her come to somewhat resent Sasuke, seeing him as the root cause of the whole mess. Deep down, she knows it isn't fair to blame him, as Sasuke really didn't have any control over any of this, but feelings don't work on logic. This is the start of her rivalry/animosity with Sasuke. Jumping ahead to the start of the manga, we don't have Naruko pulling that prank of painting the mountain, as Inno and Sakura's influence has mellowed her out a little bit. Instead, we have her sitting outside with Inno talking about the Hokage mountain and Naruko expressing her dream to surpass all of them and become the greatest Hokage in history, which causes Inno to laugh and state that she's been saying that since they were 6. Inno then turns serious and asks Naruko if there's anything wrong, as she's been acting rather strange lately. Naruko assures her that she's completely fine. Later, Naruko is training with Sakura, who is trying to help her improve her chakra control to the point where she can produce a proper clone. Long story short, it's not going well. At the end of training, Sakura asks the same question as Inno and receives the same answer. However, despite her words, Naruko has an internal monologue about how she feels like she's being left behind, that Inno and Sakura only spend time with her out of habit than the desire to. Yeah, the girl has some abandonment issues. After that, you know the drill. Naruko fails the exam and Mizuki tricks her into stealing the scroll. However, in this timeline, both Ino and Sakura find out about what's going on. After the exam, both girls find out about Naruko failing and head over to her apartment in order to comfort her, running into each other on their way there. Before they can get into a fight, however, they overhear some shinobi talking about Naruko stealing the scroll and race off in order to find her. They both knew that Naruko would never do something like this of her own volition. She had to have gotten the idea from someone else. The question was, who? Now, since the girls had gotten a head start while the adults were talking, I'm going to say that they find Naruko just before Iruka. Naruko is surprised to see Sakura and Ino there, and asks what they're doing out so late at night. To which the girls counter that they could ask her the same thing, and ask why she looks so exhausted. Naruko then explains that Mizuki had told her that if she learned the techniques in the scroll she currently had, she would be allowed to pass, that they would still be able to be on equal footing and she would be able to keep up. Sakura and Ino are confused at this. The way Naruko was talking sounded like she thought they were going to leave her if she didn't pass. Was this what was making her act so strangely? It's at this point that Iruka approaches the girls, having heard what Naruko had said. He is just about to say something when he catches a glimpse of something and throws the three girls out of the way as a barrage of kunai come flying at him. The three girls stare in horror as Mizuki appears, demanding that Naruko hand over the scroll. Then, wanting to hurt Naruko and hoping to turn Sakura and Ino against her, he reveals the truth about the Nine Tails and how it's sealed within Naruko, stating that Naruko is the fox. To his shock, however, Sakura and Ino shoot this down without hesitation. If you really think that, then you don't know Naruko at all. Naruko may hold the fox's spirit, or power, or whatever, but she's no fox. She's a kitten, and don't you forget it. Hearing this, Iruka smiles. Couldn't have said it better myself, girls. Realizing that he's not going to turn them against Naruko, Mizuki tries to attack the girls only for Iruka to jump in the way and protect them. Badly hurt, Iruka tells Naruko that he's sorry for not being a better friend to her, like Sakura and Ino were. He then tells Sakura and Ino to take Naruko and run. Before they can, however, Naruko speaks up. She refuses. She's been running away from everything, from her fear of Sakura and Ino leaving her, from her insecurities, even from Iruka. She's not running away anymore. Facing Mizuki, she creates an army of shadow clones before leveling him with a glare. No one hurts my friends. Chapter 2. Team 7. After beating down on Mizuki, Naruko turns to Iruka, Sakura, and Ino, apologizing for getting them wrapped up in this mess. She really just wanted to pass. Now without an immediate threat, Sakura and Ino are finally able to confront their friend about why she'd been so desperate to graduate and if it had anything to do with why she'd been acting off lately. Finally, the girls are able to have a heart-to-heart, and Ino and Sakura finally realize that they were being pretty dumb. Not only had they let a crush end their friendship, when really it should have given them more to talk about and relate to, they'd let their stupid feud hurt their friend. A friend that they practically saw as a sister. Holding on tight to Naruko, Sakura and Ino apologize for not being there for her, and for making her think that they wouldn't want to be friends with her anymore if she wasn't able to keep up with them in rank. With the girls now reconciled, Iruka gets their attention, saying that he has a present to give to Naruko for her bravery in not only facing down Mizuki, but also facing her personal fears. He congratulates her on her graduation and presents her with her very own headband. Smiling with tears in their eyes, the three girls celebrate. The next day, Naruko has her registration done, however, it's not that dumb white and red face paint thing. It's actually a nice picture. She also meets Konohamaru, whom she gives a light bop on the head for being a disturbance, before then proceeding to lecture him about how an attack isn't a surprise attack if you announce it. She's basically channeling all the times Sakura, Ino, or Iruka have given her lectures. After that, while Naruko is spending time with Ino and Sakura, Konohamaru all but demands to be Naruko's student. To this, she says that she's only just graduated the academy, but she would be willing to show him some tricks if he is willing to be polite and address her by name. Now, something that I should clear up is that the Ninja Centerfold, or Sexy Jutsu, does not exist in this timeline. So Naruto would instead be teaching him a new jutsu unique to Naruto, which I'm calling Kitten Me. This is a transformation jutsu in which Naruto turns herself into a kitten. Yes, I did get the idea from her nickname. All the while, Sakura and Ino are there watching their friend trying to teach this kid. When Ebisu shows up and starts bad-mouthing Naruto, instead of Naruto being the one to shut him up, it's Sakura and Ino, who, through their combined demon big sister's mad glare, managed to scare Ebisu into apologizing to Naruto. It also startles him as he's never expected her to have such loyal friends. After this, Naruto gives Konohamaru the speech about the road to being Hokage having no shortcuts, and the boy declares that he will beat Naruto and become the Hokage. The next day, Naruto, Sakura, and Ino all sit at the same table, waiting to be told the new Genin teams. While they wait, they are approached by another student who asks why Naruto is there and why Sakura and Ino are talking to her. To which the girls reply that Naruto graduated the academy the other day and that she's sitting with them because she's their friend. Just as the class is about to start a ruckus, Sasuke walks over and tells the girls to move over as there's nowhere else for him to sit. Sakura and Ino, knowing that they'd probably get into a fight if he sat next to one of them, instead maneuver it so that he's sitting next to Naruto, who they give an apologetic look. When the teams are read out, Sakura and Naruto are stunned to find they are on the same team as Sasuke. Looking over to Ino nervously, the blonde girl simply sighs before smiling at Sakura and telling her to take care of Naruto. Sakura grins. "Who do you take me for? It's pretty obvious she's not going to do it herself." Hey! While they're waiting for their new teacher to arrive, Sakura notices that Naruto is getting rather antsy. While Naruto isn't as impulsive as Karen Naruto, she is still willing to play pranks on people if she thinks they deserve it. Plus, she's getting really bored. Sakura is able to recognize this and so concocts a scheme to keep her entertained, or at least still. Pulling out a hairbrush, a few hair ties, and a hairstyle magazine, she asks Naruto to let her style her hair, giving the blonde puppy eyes. Naruto easily caves and agrees, but on the condition that her hairstyle needs to be practical since they don't know if they're going to need to do any sparring when their teacher finally shows up. Sakura agrees and decides to put Naruto's hair in a romantic tuck. While she's working, she fills the silence with random comments and observations about Naruto's hair, like how she needs to get it trimmed, to which Naruto responds by saying that going to the hairdresser is too expensive and she doesn't trust herself to not make a mess of it. Eventually, Kakashi arrives just as Sakura is finishing off the hairstyle, and he has to say that his first impressions of them are that they're kind of boring. He then calls everyone up to the roof where we have everyone's list of likes, dislikes, and dreams. And while Sasuke's are the same, Naruto and Sakura's reactions are very different. Sakura worries that the person he's sworn to kill is Naruto, as she knows that they haven't gotten along in the past, while Naruto is worried about what that person could have possibly done to make Sasuke hate them so much. For Sakura, she says that one of her favourite things is her precious little sister Naruto, while she tackles the blonde in a hug. As for her dream, she thinks about it for a moment before saying that she hasn't made up her mind yet. Then for her dislikes, she glances at Naruto at the corner of her eye, her hug tightening ever so slightly before saying that there's nothing in the world she hates more than those that hurt and hate others for no good reason. For Naruto, she says that her favourite things are spending time with her best friends Sakura and Ino, and when they can eat ramen together. She dislikes days when she can't spend time with any of her friends, and her dream is to be the greatest Hokage in history. After the introductions are done, Kakashi is seriously reconsidering his stance on the three being boring. Sasuke has that whole "I want to kill someone" thing going, while Sakura has a very strong protective instinct over Naruto, and Naruto herself is very interesting with that dream of hers. He then tells the three to meet them tomorrow for their real test and instructs them to not eat breakfast. The next day, after Kakashi arrives late and Sakura again had to distract Naruto by putting her hair up the same as before, he explains the bell test. This time, Naruto doesn't try to attack Kakashi before he starts the test, and instead listens carefully to the instructions and eyes the bells carefully. When Kakashi tells them to start, Sakura and Sasuke dash off while Naruto remains behind. While Kakashi reads his copy of Makeout Practice, Naruto starts to come at him slowly from many different angles, trying to test out if the shinobi has any holes in his guard. While this is happening, Sakura feels a tap on her shoulder and almost screams before a hand slaps over her mouth to keep her quiet. Looking behind her, she comes face to face with Naruto, who's holding a figure to her lips. "Do you know where Sasuke is?" Sakura shakes her head before pointing to the Naruto still testing Kakashi. Naruto explains that it's just one of his shadow clones to keep Kakashi distracted while she found her and Sasuke. With that said, the two race off to find the Uchiha. Once they do, Naruto tells them that they have to work together if they're going to stand a chance. Sasuke shoots this down immediately, while Sakura asks Naruto what she's thinking, genuinely curious as to what made her come to this conclusion. Naruto explains that she doesn't want any of them failing when all of them had worked so hard to make it this far. Also, it wasn't simply a matter of one person failing. The regulations stated that each Genin team had to have 3 Genin, so if one of them failed the test, they all did. Sakura is really surprised. She'd completely forgotten that part of the ninja rulebook, so for Naruto to remember it made her feel really proud of her friend. His attention now gained, Sasuke asks if Naruto has a plan, to which she smiles. Back with Kakashi, he had finally gotten bored enough with the clone to throw an actual punch, making the clone poof and making Kakashi somewhat impressed that Naruto had managed to pull the switcheroo on him. However, time is ticking down and he's starting to wonder what's taking the teen so long. Just as he's about to go looking for them, Naruto and Sasuke come charging out of the trees, rushing him. And with their combined effort, he does end up needing to put his book away. At the edge of the trees, he spots Sakura cheering on the two of them. This makes Kakashi roll his eyes, coming to the conclusion that their plan was simply to have Naruto and Sasuke double team him and get the bells. However, he soon hears a loud shout of "Charge!" as a swarm of Naruto and Sasuke clones launch out of the trees and begin to dogpile him. Somehow, Naruto had managed to teach Sasuke the clone jutsu in the time before their attack. This was actually starting to get tricky. He manages to dispel most of the clones, however Naruto and Sasuke each manage to get a punch on each of Kakashi's cheeks, making him grab their hands and prepare to throw them. However, before he can, a little furry form leaps up and snatches the bells from his waist. Eye widening, Kakashi sees a little pink kitten holding the bells in its mouth. Throwing Naruto and Sasuke aside, he prepares to go after the cat, only for it to turn into Sakura in a puff of smoke. "Naruto! Sasuke! Now!" Jumping over Kakashi in his shock, Naruto and Sasuke get in front of him just in time to catch the bell that Sakura had thrown at them together. Big smiles on Naruto and Sakura's faces and a small smirk on Sasuke's, the three turn to Kakashi. "There! All 3 of us nabbed a bell. You can't fail any of us." Kakashi chuckles at the way Naruto had said that. It was like she was challenging him to say no, to say that they actually did fail despite having a solid argument. He says that they all pass and congratulates Naruto on being able to teach Sakura and Sasuke the clone jutsu and that cat transformation jutsu in the time they had. Only to be told that Naruto hadn't taught them. Sakura already knew the kitten me due to them being childhood friends and helping Naruto create it. As for the clones, they were all Naruto's. She just had them transform into her teammates in order to trick Kakashi into thinking Sasuke had the jutsu and Sakura was somewhere she wasn't. That way his attention would be all on her and Sasuke, allowing Sakura to sneak through his defenses in her cat form. Giving a small laugh, Kakashi invites the 3 to have lunch at a restaurant to celebrate. Chapter 3: The Land of Waves.
After the newly established Team 7 have finished their celebratory lunch, Kakashi is surprised when Naruto approaches him. He'd expected her to just go home like Sasuke and Sakura. He's even more shocked when Naruto asks him, straight up and to his face, if he knows about her being a Jinchuriki. When he confirms that he does, Naruto continues to throw curveballs at him by asking if she is allowed to tell Sasuke. When Kakashi asks why, Naruto explains that Sakura and Ino had both been present when she'd been told the truth. So, at the moment, Sasuke was the only one on their team that didn't know, and that wasn't really fair. Kakashi understands where Naruto is coming from, but is worried about what kind of reaction Sasuke might have to this knowledge. Sakura not having a bad reaction made sense since the girls were childhood friends. But Sasuke and Naruto had spent the majority of their childhood picking fights with each other. Just because Naruto seemed willing to bury the hatchet didn't mean Sasuke was. He tells Naruto that since the secret involves her personally, she can tell Sasuke, but there is quite a bit of legal stuff to worry about with it, since it's an S-rank secret. He makes a deal with Naruto. When the team finishes a C-rank mission, then she can tell him. He tells her that this is just to make sure that none of them can get in trouble, and Naruto believes this. Time passes with Team 7 going on D-ranked missions and training. During this time, Naruto actually decides to teach her team how to use the Shadow Clone. This is because A, it's just a very useful jutsu, and B, she actually knows that she can retain the memories of her clones. With Sakura and Ino being her best friends, I think Naruto would have had the importance of reading everything about a jutsu before attempting it power washed into her brain. So she'd read about that little detail while she had the scroll and was now teaching it to her teammates to further improve their training. Sakura is very eager for Naruto to teach her this because it means that she'll be able to learn faster and be more useful. Sasuke is more reluctant to learn something from Naruto of all people, but he's not going to pass up such a useful trick. As for what they'll have been learning, I'll say that Sakura will have been learning some genjutsu and some minor medical ninjutsu. This is because she has strong chakra control, so I think Kakashi would suggest genjutsu after asking him for some ideas. And she would want to learn healing, half for practical reasons, it always helps to have a healer on the team, but mostly because she knows that Naruto used to get pushed around and beat up a lot before she and Ino came into her life. She doesn't know about Naruto's healing factor and wants to be able to help her comrades both in and out of battle. Sasuke for his part would have started on training he got in later parts of the series sooner, due to the Shadow Clone and speeding everything up a bit. So I'm going to say that Kakashi starts training him in how to awaken his Sharingan, as well as teaching him some lightning jutsu, while Sasuke also starts learning some of his family jutsus. And while Sasuke wants to know how and why Kakashi has a Sharingan, he never gets a straight answer. Now for Naruto, I'll say that this is where she starts really getting into Shuriken Jutsu and experimenting with how to combine jutsus. Kakashi also points out that she's actually very talented with transformation jutsus, so maybe she could also expand on that instead of leaving it with her kitten me. This is actually something I noticed with canon Naruto that I'm surprised has never drawn attention to. The one jutsu that he can do easily, and is one that he made up, is a transformation jutsu. He actually uses transformations a lot throughout the story, especially early on. The canon fight with Zabuza comes to mind. Heck, he transforms into Sasuke in order to trick Sakura into kissing him. So clearly he's got some talent there. Why did no one ever bring it up? Each of the team also have their chakra nature learnt and learn one jutsu of that nature, with Sasuke learning something with a lightning nature, Naruto wind, and Sakura water. Sasuke learns lightning style shadow clone, Naruto learns wind bullet, and Sakura learns water shield. Eventually, Naruto starts to suspect that Kakashi is intentionally preventing the team from going on a C-rank mission in order to avoid following through on their deal. So one day after Kakashi leaves, she asks Sasuke and Sakura to stay back and talks with them about doing a C-rank mission. She phrases it as her simply wanting to test how far they've all come, especially with all of them using the shadow clones. Sasuke buys this whole cloth and also wants to test himself, while Sakura gets the sneaking suspicion that there's something else going on. They agree to request a higher rank mission next time, and Sasuke leaves, while Sakura stays to ask Naruto what her real reason is. Naruto, knowing she's been caught, tells Sakura about the deal that she has with Kakashi. TLDR, they still get the mission to escort Tazuna, but this time it's a lot more formal and polite. Also, when Tazuna calls Naruto a midget with the face of an imbecile, Sakura is the one to fly into a rage, requiring Naruto to hold her back. The journey to the Land of the Waves starts out normally. However, when the Demon Brothers try to ambush them, it's a complete failure. Sasuke, wanting to get as much practice with his Sharingan as possible, had been using it while they walked and had noticed the chakra coming from the puddle. Naruto had also recognized it due to her recent training with transformation jutsus. Before anyone else can react, Sasuke runs through a set of hand signs, launching a powerful fireball at the puddle and forcing the brothers to reveal themselves. Knowing their cover is blown, the brothers rush at Tazuna, only to be intercepted by Sasuke and Naruto, who knock them out. Unfortunately, since the brothers had been in the process of an attack and Naruto is slightly slower than Sasuke, she's unable to avoid getting hurt. Seeing that Naruto is now bleeding from her shoulder, Sakura rushes over to her and begins to extract the poison. Once she's done, she's about to start wrapping the injury when she notices that it's already almost healed. Not wanting to draw attention to it in front of Sasuke and Tazuna, Sakura still wraps up Naruto's shoulder, wondering to herself if it's because of the Kyuubi inside her. Once Naruto is patched up, Kakashi compliments Naruto and Sasuke on noticing the puddle and acting swiftly to neutralize the threat. He also commends Sakura on her quick response to Naruto being hurt, as if the poison had been ignored, it could have well killed her. Kakashi then confronts Tazuna, and we get the explanation that this is not actually a C-rank mission. Side note, Sasuke still makes a snide comment about Naruto getting hurt, only to get chewed out by Sakura, much to his surprise. Later on, we still get the moment with the rabbit because Naruto is still pretty anxious and high-strung over the earlier attack, and she's feeling a little irritated that she had gotten hurt while Sasuke came out of it unscathed. When Zabuza makes his entrance, everyone is still pretty shaken up because Zabuza is a scary opponent, and Kakashi still needs to comfort everyone. After that, the first part of the fight goes about the same, until Kakashi gets trapped in the water prison. Not only does Naruto not get her headband taken away, but she also goes for her shuriken pouch, pulling a few out before sighing and handing it to Sasuke. She tells him that she's not too proud to admit that of the three of them, Sasuke has the best aim. Sasuke doesn't initially know what she's planning until he takes hold of the pouch, sensing something from it. So that's what she's got planned. He has to admit, he's impressed. Sasuke throws shuriken after shuriken at Zabuza, only for him to bat them away. He mocks them in such a pitiful attempt, only for several of the shuriken that he knocked behind him to transform into Naruto clones. In unison, they all shout, "Eat this!" and throw kunai at his head, back, arms, and legs, forcing Zabuza to jump out of the way and release the prison. From there, the same thing happens, with Haku needing to come in and save Zabuza. When they eventually get to Tazuna's home, Kakashi decides that it would be in everyone's best interest for the team to get some further training, since they're going up against someone like Zabuza. As for the interactions with Inari, they are very different in this timeline, due to Naruto knowing what it's like to have people you love disappear from your life. She also has her heart-to-heart with Inari much earlier, right when she hears him crying over his father's photo. Entering his room, Naruto asks him if the man in the photo is his father. When the boy refuses to answer, she takes it as a yes and tells Inari that she's actually a little jealous of him. She then proceeds to tell him about how she was practically hated in her own village, how she never felt like she had a home or anyone that truly cared if she was alive or dead, until Sakura and Ino came into her life. She can't relate to the pain of someone being taken from you against both of your will, since both of her parents had died before she was old enough to even remember them. But she can understand the pain of being left behind. She then tells Inari about Ino and Sakura's feud, skipping over some details, and about how she felt like they no longer wanted her. Even though they aren't blood related, they're the closest thing she has to a family, and she knows that if she ever let anything happen to them, she'd never forgive herself. She ruffles the boy's hair and smiles, asking the rhetorical question of maybe that being why his father had fought back, even to his death. Inari is stunned after hearing all of this, not only overhearing about Naruto's life and how important the pink-haired girl is to her, but also over Naruto pointing out something so obvious. Nodding his head, he buries his face in Naruto's chest, crying even harder now while Naruto hugs him gently. I miss him so much. I know. That pain is proof of how much you love him, and how much he loves you. The pain of grief is the price we pay for love. As for the training, Kakashi still has them do the tree walking since they don't know about it yet. When he explains it to them, Sakura actually smacks her head against a tree in frustration, thinking about how much easier it would have made helping Naruto while they were at the academy. Due to the nature of this exercise, none of the genin make any shadow clones in order to save as much chakra as they can for the tree walking. When Sakura shows off her talent, she chooses not to get upset over Sasuke ignoring her and instead just enjoys Naruko's cheering. Later, when Naruto asks Sakura for advice, Sakura goes into more detail on how to focus the chakra, almost overloading her with information, but still getting the point across. When Sakura is put on protection detail, instead of just sitting around being bored, Sakura decides to help with the construction effort, thinking that it would be a good way to build up her physical strength. Remember, even though Sakura is ahead in terms of chakra control, she's behind Sasuke and Naruto in terms of raw power, and she knows this. Meanwhile, over with Sasuke and Naruto, when Sasuke asks her about what she and Sakura talked about, instead of telling him to mind his own business, she realizes that this is Sasuke's way of asking for help. So she decides to tell him what Sakura had told her, only paraphrasing to keep things simple. Remember, Sakura and Ino have buried the hatchet and reconciled, so Naruto doesn't have any reason to resent Sasuke anymore, even though they do still butt heads out of habit. One day, after training herself to exhaustion, she wakes up to see a kind face looking down at her worriedly. While helping the stranger pick medical herbs, the two end up talking for a really long time. Naruto even lets slip about the whole situation with Sakura and Ino, which Haku begins to press her on. Despite wanting to get away from the topic, she eventually spills to Haku about the two girls who are the closest thing to family she's ever had. She tells Haku that they'd had a falling out, but not over what, and despite the fact that they've buried the hatchet, she still feels scared that something else could cause them to split apart and leave her all alone. This time, for good. She's also been worrying about her own actions during the whole mess, realizing that she wasn't the nicest of people to a certain person at that time. Even though she wanted to show others that same kindness that Ino and Sakura had shown her, she'd been kind of cruel to someone that needed a friend. Haku smiles and says that she must really love her two sisters. He tells her that she should apologize to that person and try to start over, and that she must be very strong, since she has so many people to be strong for. He also tells her that he's actually a boy, making Naruto feel somewhat insecure, thinking that even a boy is more feminine than her.
Chapter 4 The Great Naruto Bridge.
Just like in canon, Sasuke and Naruto do eventually end up getting to the top of the tree, with Naruto being so exhausted that she doesn't wake up on time the next morning. And also like in canon, the team decides to leave her there to sleep. Only this time, Sakura lists off to Tsunami a long list of things she and Ino had always done when Naruto had worn herself out that seemed to help. After this, things remain the same until Sasuke ends up trapped in the Ice Mirror prison. Here, Sasuke is able to activate his Sharingan at will with one Tomo in each eye, allowing him to better dodge Haku's attacks. Sakura, for her part, creates a bunch of shadow clones in order to surround Tazuna and better protect him from any stray attacks. When Naruto finally gets there, she creates a bunch of shadow clones, while out of sight, to distract Zabuza and Haku. While her clones keep them busy, she transforms into her kitten form and heads into the mirrors to try and help Sasuke. Thinking she can sneak in, get Sasuke, and get out while Haku is distracted, she's in for a nasty surprise. Just as she's about to lead Sasuke out, Haku finishes off the last clone and attacks, forcing the two teens back inside and forcing Naruto out of her transformation. With that plan now down the toilet, Naruto begins to pull out a bunch of kunai with explosion tags on them and throw them at the ice mirrors on one side, while Sasuke throws fireballs at the other. When this fails, Naruto gets an idea and tells Sasuke to fire another fireball. When he does, Naruto fires off an air bullet at the fireball, causing it to grow larger and explode. While it does partly melt some of the mirrors, it's still not enough. Haku, thinking that Naruto is the biggest threat due to that trick being her idea, decides that he needs to take her out fast. Haku launches at Sasuke from his blind spot, making sure to be in Naruto's field of view. Naruto, thinking that Sasuke is about to be blindsided, not realizing that Sasuke would be able to dodge, shoves him out of the way, taking the hit that was seemingly meant for him. Sasuke stares in shock at Naruto, who now more resembles a pincushion. As she falls forward into his arms, he sits there unable to move. He couldn't understand why she'd done that. She'd made it very clear from the time they were kids that she hated his guts. Sure, they were on the same team now, but that still didn't explain why she'd done this. Naruto, feeling her strength fading, looks up at Sasuke. Remembering the words of the boy from the forest, Naruto decides it's now or never.
Sasuke, I'm sorry.
Idiot! You should have let me handle it! Why did you— Despite the pain, Naruto shakes her head slightly, cutting Sasuke off.
That's not what I'm apologizing for. I'm sorry that I resented you. It wasn't fair. What happened with Sakura and Ino wasn't your fault. I'm sorry I blamed you for it. And I'm sorry that I never reached out to you back then. If I hadn't been such a scaredy kitten, if I'd reached out to you like Ino did for me, maybe we could have been friends.
Sasuke watches in silent horror as Naruto's eyes slowly close. As much as he'd always been annoyed by her, Naruto had been beneficial to his training, especially when she taught him the Shadow Clone. Against his will, memories of the massacre on his clan flashed through Sasuke's mind. It was just like back then. He was still too weak. He couldn't even protect his teammate, who, even now, was weaker than him. His eyes sting for a bit, but when it stops, he notices that he can see Haku a bit more clearly. As Haku rushes him, Sasuke's body fizzles a little with electricity before fading, and when Haku tries to land an attack, Sasuke bursts into electricity, revealing this to be a Shadow Clone, and stunning Haku. Sasuke then appears behind him, his eyes filled with rage, and tries to slice Haku with a kunai, only for Haku to turn into water, revealing himself to be a water clone. Before Sasuke can try for another attack, a terrifying chakra fills the area, and the two turn to Naruto as the senbone fly out of her body. The blonde slowly gets to her feet, her fingernails elongated like claws, the whisker marks on her face more pronounced, her canines longer and sharper, and her eyes blood red. She doesn't fully stand, her body remaining slightly crouched. She almost looks like a wild animal. For Naruto's part, her mind is in a haze, and there's a voice that isn't hers echoing in her head.
Kill him!
Despite not knowing whose voice that was, she's not about to argue. This masked creep had tried to kill her, her client, her sister, and her teammates. She'd kill him! Quickly switching over to the others for a moment, Kakashi isn't as hurt here as he was in canon. This is because with Sakura using Shadow Clones to watch her and Tazuna's back, as well as knowing Water Shield, she's able to have her clones use the shield long enough to get them both out of the way. Meaning, Kakashi doesn't need to use himself as a shield, since Sakura's defenses are much better here. That being said, Sakura does still have much lower chakra reserves compared to Sasuke and Naruto. So despite having better chakra control, she is still working with a limited resource. So I think she'd only be able to do this about 3 times before she ran out of enough chakra to not only replace the Shadow Clones, but also use the Water Shield. Luckily for her, she doesn't need to, since the sudden presence of a frightening chakra is enough to get everyone's attention. Frantically, Sakura looks around, trying to figure out where it's coming from, only to realize that it's coming from the place she last saw Sasuke and Naruto. A ball of dread settles in her stomach as a million scenarios flash through her mind. This couldn't be good. Back with Naruto, in such a state of rage and protective instinct, she charges the man that had tried to hurt those dear to her. Grabbing Haku before he can disappear into one of the mirrors, she throws him into another, cracking it. Then, before Haku could react, or even try to get out of the way, she punches him right through the mirror, breaking his mask and knocking him out cold. It's only then that Naruto recognizes this boy as the one from the forest, the one that had given her advice and that she considered a possible friend. This means that Haku isn't there to stop Kakashi's strike, so when Gato arrives with an army behind him, Zabuza ends up going through the fight with a hole in his chest. Badass! Thy name is Zabuza! Before he dies, Zabuza asks Naruto to take Haku with her, to give him a chance at a better life. After this, the timeline syncs up mostly with canon. The thugs are scared off, the Great Naruto, or in this case, Great Naruko bridge is finished, and Team 7 go home. Except this time, Naruto gives her address to Inari so they can keep in contact via letters, and Haku goes with them. He's not sure why Naruto didn't kill him, but he wants to respect his master's last wish. He also takes Zabuza's executioner's blade with him, knowing that Zabuza wouldn't want anyone else getting their hands on it. Besides, it's all he can hold on to as a memento. On the way, he and Naruto talk and get even closer than before. He asks Naruto what her dream is, and when Naruto tells him, he can't help but smile. If Naruto really did become the Hokage, then Konoha would be very lucky indeed. As for the Hokage, I don't see him being too upset over letting Haku stay in the village, since he is a nice guy, so I think he would put Haku on some kind of probation within the village. Also, Kakashi does follow through on his promise, and the day after they arrive back, the team, including Haku, meets where they all had the bell test. Finally, Naruto tells Sasuke, and also Haku, about her being a Jinchuriki, explaining what had happened on the bridge and why she was such a fast healer. Sasuke is surprised, but he doesn't act aggressively. It actually explains a lot about how Naruto was treated and why everyone kept whispering about her while they were growing up. He's just a little annoyed that he was the last to know, but he can still understand why. If anything, he's more curious about Naruto's apology and what she'd resented him over. But he's also got a feeling that Naruto would never tell him without seemingly on the brink of death, so he decides he can figure it out for himself. Haku also doesn't act negatively. After all, his last master was called a demon and actually had the attitude to back it up. Naruto was just acting as a locked box to a literal demon. As for the Chunin exams, Kakashi decides to enter them on his own. They're all progressing rapidly thanks to Naruto's Shadow Clone trick, and he thinks it would be a good chance for them to meet more strong people. So during the month before the exams, he has the team focus on their teamwork since it's really what they need to work on the most. As for what happens with Konohamaru, Sakura actually decides to join in on the ninja game, seeing it as a good way to get to know the kids that Naruto has become so fond of. When they run into Konkoro and Temari, instead of Naruto getting beat up, she quickly rushes in and snatches Konohamaru away, before then scolding them for being a bunch of bullies. Then Gaara arrives and everything goes about the same, minus Sakura feeling hesitant over the exams. Remember, this is a much more motivated Sakura who is already proving herself as a kunoichi. Things only change again when Lee decides to challenge Sasuke to a fight. Instead of Naruto rushing in to fight him, she instead asks, out loud, why Sasuke always seems to attract all the weirdos and crazies. To which Sasuke counters with a, "You're one to talk," which she can't really argue. After this, the fight with Sasuke and Lee goes about the same, since Lee is in a bit of a class of his own, though Sasuke does do a bit better. Upon hearing that the move Lee was about to use could have killed Sasuke, Naruto walks right up to Lee and says in a scary calm voice that if he puts her teammates' lives at risk again, she will end him. While she's walking back to her team, Lee shakily asks why she's getting so strung up about this, since he's heard of the little girl that would pick fights with Sasuke all the time. Stopping, Naruto looks at him over her shoulder and smiles. "I grew up. Oh, and stay away from my sister."
Chapter 5 Chunin Exams.
Upon entering the testing room, Naruto is immediately tackled in a hug by Ino, who greets her and Sakura in a happy rush, before giving Sasuke a friendly hello. Though she still doesn't detach herself from Naruto. Soon after, they are approached by the other teams, and Naruto hugs Hinata in greeting since they haven't seen each other in a long time. Interestingly enough, Naruto doesn't do that loud and really dumb proclamation of being the winner of the exams. Remember, Sakura and Ino were very big influences in her life, so she knows when to keep her mouth shut and not spout off. She also doesn't like Kabuto very much. The guy came off as really arrogant and like he was trying to make Sakura look stupid, and that really rubbed her the wrong way. When the test is explained, Naruto has a minor internal panic attack for a few minutes until she hears a very faint sound just at the edge of her hearing. Eyes darting around, she sees that no one else seems to hear it. She's about to start ignoring it when it starts to sound familiar. Growing up, Sakura, Ino, and Naruto had come up with their own secret language using sounds that you'd usually hear in a classroom so that they could talk to each other during class. They'd even used it to help Naruto cheat on a few of their tests. Naruto lets a small smile come to her lips as she realizes what's happening. Sakura must have placed a small genjutsu on her that would allow her to hear their secret language without anyone else hearing it. Reaching behind her, she gives her head a light scratch, which is a carefully concealed thumbs up, to let Sakura know that she's heard. The reason I did this is because it acts as a cute little character moment for Sakura and Naruto, and makes sense given the new backstory. Also, it was either something like this, or going with the original events. When Anko shows up and explains the Forest of Death, Naruto doesn't spout off and is instead already calculating various plans and strategies, which Sasuke points out to Sakura, the two being somewhat impressed. As soon as the test begins, Naruto tells Sakura and Sasuke to create 4 shadow clones each, which they do. She then explains her plan. By using their 4 shadow clones to split up into 4 teams, not only would they be able to cover more ground, but it would also keep the other teams guessing as to which group was the real one. This way, their clones could get the scrolls, or at least locate them, while they got as close to the tower as possible. Even Sasuke has to admit it's a pretty solid plan. They do still need to stop for Naruto to answer the call of nature, though this time, instead of Naruto getting grabbed, she flashes into a kitten me and loses them in the trees, before getting back with the others still as a cat. She then quickly changes back and tells them to get ready, after which they take out the sound ninja no problem. Sasuke, thinking of how the ninja had tried to grab Naruto and Naruto's own growing skills with transformation jutsus, still makes the suggestion of having a password. When Sasuke tells his idea of a password, Naruto immediately knows that she would never be able to remember that, and that that's Sasuke's point. As she's about to tell him that she doesn't appreciate the assumption that she would be the one to get nabbed, she senses an attack coming at them. Just before she can scream out a warning, they are blasted by a strong gust of wind. When the grass ninja tries to impersonate Naruto, this time it's both Sakura and Sasuke who attack, with Sasuke throwing a kunai, which is dodged, and Sakura throwing a haymaker, which isn't. Over with Naruto, the moment the snake tries to eat her, she turns into a kitten form and uses her small size to duck under roots and through gaps the snake can't follow. Then, mentally noting that she doesn't have time to play tag with a snake, she creates a mass of shadow clones in order to scatter in all directions while she runs off to find her friends. Back with Sakura and Sasuke, Sakura is standing with her foot on the ninja's neck, demanding to know where Naruto is, while Sasuke grabs the scroll from his pocket. Grading up at the two, he says that that stupid girl is probably snake food by now, before unleashing his killing intent. While the two are paralyzed by fear, the ninja throws Sakura off of him and into Sasuke, knocking them both to the ground and knocking the scroll out of Sasuke's hand. Just as the ninja is about to pick it up again, a figure comes flying out of the trees and right at him, causing him to jump back. Standing there, glaring at the ninja like he's something gross at the bottom of his shoe, was Naruto. Sasuke, I didn't get to say this earlier, but I really don't appreciate the assumption that I would be the one to get grabbed and swapped. Also, your password sucks. With that said, she kicks the scroll at her feet backward towards her friends. Not taking her eyes off the enemy, she tells Sasuke to put the scroll in his pocket. The ninja chuckles at this before asking if they really think they'll be able to get away. While Sasuke and Sakura hesitate, Naruto glares at him. She doesn't care what he thinks because all she knows is one thing. He hurt her friends, and for that, he was going to pay. Besides, she highly doubted that he would let them leave anyway. When the ninja confirms this, Naruto immediately throws several smoke bomb kunai before shouting "clones," sparking Sakura and Sasuke into action, each of them making a bunch of clones to fan out in groups and confuse their pursuer. Once they're far enough away, they all stop to think about their situation. They needed to think of a plan, and fast. Sakura suggests that they just make a break for the tower since they were already going that way and they now have both scrolls they need. However, both Naruto and Sasuke are concerned over the ninja catching up to them. Naruto thinks about this before asking Sasuke how he feels about cats. Over with Orochimaru, he's been trying to find the troublesome Genin again. That little trick the blonde in her team had done had been rather annoying. He'd already caught 3 decoys and was now moving on to the next group when Anko showed up. And I don't really see anything here being all that different. Back with Team 7, they are making their way through the forest towards the tower, with Sasuke being very sulky over having to turn himself into a kitten. Eventually, they reach the tower and are able to turn back into their normal states. Entering the tower, they meet up with Haruka, who Naruto hugs in delight. Now, would Kabuto still withdraw in this timeline? I'm going to say yes, because he doesn't really have a reason to stay in the fight, and if he does, the numbers become uneven. Also, since Sasuke doesn't have the curse mark in this timeline, there isn't the confrontation between him and Sakura, nor will he have to hold back. As for the matches themselves, I've decided to take a page out of Plus Ultraman's book and put everyone's names in a randomizer to make things more fun. They are as follows: Sasuke Uchiha vs Kiba Inuzuka, Kintetsuchi vs Yoroya Kado, Tenten vs Sakura Hirano, Shikamaru Nara vs Shino Aburame, Rock Lee vs Gaara, Tizumi Izurugi vs Dozu Kanuta, Naruko Uzumaki vs Neji Hyuga, Konkuro vs Ino Namanaki, Tamari vs Hinata Hyuga, Zobu Abumi vs Choji Akamichi. Now, looking at this, I think you can already see a problem. 2 of these battles are with 2 of Orochimaru's goods fighting each other, and 2 of them are already in canon. But I think I can still work with this, since one of these fights actually come later in the canon. First, let's get the easy ones out of the way. The 2 fights between those that work for Orochimaru I don't see as being very interesting. Their main goal for being there is to test Sasuke, so while it would be a pain that there would be less people to do that, I don't think they'd care who does it. Just so long as someone does. Honestly, with how the humour of this series goes, I can see them tossing a coin before their matches to determine who will win, and then just putting on a good show for the crowd. So that's what I did. The results are Yoroi Akito and Mitsumi Tsurugi as the winners. Gaara and Lee goes the same way as in canon. Remember, the first time he even met Team 7 was at the Chunin exams, so there is nothing in this timeline that could have changed this outcome. Now, for Zobu and Choji's match, I don't see Zobu winning here. In the canon, Zobu actually did fight against Choji in the Forest of Death, and his attacks were pretty useless. Especially if the sound then insulted Choji's weight, which I wouldn't be surprised at. So that's a win for Choji. Sasuke vs Kiba is also an easy win. This is a much stronger Sasuke because of his training with the Shadow Clones and the fact that Naruto is also stronger, creating a feedback loop. Kiba has had no influence that could have caused him to go up in power, so despite being 2-on-1, Kiba doesn't pull off a win here. Now onto Tenten vs Sakura, I can see this being a very difficult match. While Tenten is very skilled with weapons and is very strong, Sakura is a lot stronger than her canon counterpart with a focus on defense. Also, it's made very clear that aside from Sasuke, no one thinks much of Team 7, so I can see Tenten underestimating Sakura, which would be a big mistake. In fact, I can see Tenten not using her twin Rising Dragons at all because she's so confident, and that would be her undoing. While Sakura uses her water shield to block all of Tenten's weapons, she would also be using Shadow Clones to keep pressure on and getting jutsus to catch her off guard. However, this really depends on if Tenten decides to take Sakura seriously or not, because if she went hard right from the start, the match could end in a tie, with both girls fighting until they collapse. Unstoppable force means immovable object. Comment down below and let me know which of these outcomes you want to see. Next is Naruto vs Neji. Now remember, Naruto and Hinata are actually friends in this timeline, with Hinata being the only one to talk to her at the academy after Sakura and Ino decided to be stupid for about a decade. So I'm going to say that Naruto already knows about Neji and how he treats Hinata, so she would already have a strong desire to slam his face into the ground. But she also knows a little bit about how the Hyuga clan works and how it's negatively affected Hinata, so there would also be a little bit of sympathy for him due to her own struggles. So unlike the canon, Naruto is going into this fight with 2 goals. 1, kick Neji on his butt for everything he's put Hinata through, and 2, knock some sense into the idiot. Walking out onto the field, Naruto wears a big smile, waving at Neji in greeting. Then, she tells Neji not to hold back, because she most certainly won't. The match starts, and Naruto makes several clones who all draw kunai and shuriken with various tags on them. One clone throws a shuriken that explodes into a cloud of smoke, while another throws a kunai with an explosion tag. Asking the blonde if that's all she's got, Neji begins the rotation, only for Naruto to yell, "Not white and launch an air bullet at the exploding kunai, creating a smaller version of the fire bullet bomb, sending Neji back from the shockwave. Seeing the anger in Neji's eyes, Naruto smiles. Hey Neji! Still think fate is set in stone? Because I hate to break it to ya, but you're dead wrong! Neji, enraged at Naruto's words, tries to get rid of the clones and get to her, only for them to throw more smoke tags, completely rendering his sight useless, since she's using the same chakra trick that Naruto had used in the canon. All around him, Naruto and her clones continue their talk no jutsu. I'm proof of that thrice over. Number 1! A series of explosion tags come at him from all directions, forcing Neji to dodge it lest he fall to the same trick again. Everyone always says that female shinobi are weaker than males. Well, look who's kicking whose ass! Number 2! Several Naruto clones rush out of the smoke to attack Neji. Much to his shock, they're actually a lot faster and stronger than he'd ever thought possible, forcing him on the back foot and making him use rotation more and more. Clone jutsu was my worst technique. I failed the academy graduation exam 3 times because of it. Wait, actually it would technically be 4. And number 3! Neji is tired. How could this girl make so many clones if it was her weakest ability? From the moment I was born, everyone decided that my fate was to be forever alone, to be forever unwanted. Well, if that's the case, then how can I have so many people that care about me now? I may not have a mom or dad, but I have 2 sisters that mean the world to me. A kooky dumbass uncle, 2 of the best friends I could have ever asked for. And the newest addition? A big brother that believes in me! Sensing something behind him, Neji only has enough time to look up as a foot collides with his head, slamming him into the ground. Dizzy and bleeding, Neji lies there unable to get back up as Naruto stands over him, before crouching down with a soft smile. Fate is what we decide it is, Neji. If you give up before you've even started, you've already lost. My fate is to become Hokage and protect everyone that saw the value of my life, because that's what I've decided, and what I'm working for. What's yours?
Chapter 6: How to Tame a Fox.
Next is Ino vs Kankuro. Now, while I see Ino being a little bit stronger in this timeline due to the whole thing with Mitsuki, I don't see it being by any significant amount. Remember, the main reason Team 7 is so much stronger is because they've been taking advantage of the shadow clones. Ino doesn't have that, so while she may be stronger, it's not that big of a leap. Also, Kankuro is ruthless and would be going hard and fast. Sad to say, Ino is just outgunned. Next is Shikamaru vs Shino. Now, this was a tricky one for several reasons. First, both Shikamaru and Shino are very intelligent. They both know how to strategize. Second, Shikamaru is lazy, so I can see him forfeiting the match if he calculated it would be too much work. Third, I don't really know everything that either of these two know at this point, since they get so little screen time in this arc. So I can really see this going one of 3 ways. Either Shikamaru manages to get Shino with a shadow possession, thus rendering Shino's bugs useless since he can't issue orders. Shikamaru forfeits the match after deciding that dealing with Shino's bugs is too much effort. Or Shino takes the win before Shikamaru can come to the conclusion that it's too much work, which is the least likely, but still possible. So, since 2 of those are losing scenarios for Shikamaru, I'm going to say he forfeits similarly to in canon. Finally, we have Temari vs Hinata. And this match... oh jeez. While Hinata may be a little bit stronger here, if Tenten couldn't take Temari out, poor Hinata doesn't stand a chance. Here, however, I can see Hinata not getting as hurt as Tenten. The reason Tenten got hurt so badly, I feel, is that Temari saw her as someone to take somewhat seriously and had pride. With Hinata, I can see Temari being a lot gentler but also very condescending, comparing beating up Hinata to kicking a puppy. With that, the final victors are Yoroi Akado, Mitsumi Tsurugi, Gaara, Sasuke, Naruto, Sakura, Kankuro, Shino, and Tamari. Now, instead of doing the randomizer again, this time I'm just going with what I think will be interesting. Shino vs Yoroi Akado, Sakura vs Kankuro, Tamari vs Sasuke Uchiha, Naruto vs Gaara, with Mitsumi getting to battle in a 3-way free-for-all in the finals. With that, we move on to the training period, and for this what if, I'm going to say that Haku decides to be part of the training for all of Team 7, with him teaching each of them something different. He'll spend more time with Sakura since she has the same elements as him and thus can more readily use what he teaches. Also, he would be Sakura's only teacher, while Naruto would still have Jiraiya and Sasuke would still have Kakashi. I'm going to give each of them 3 new jutsus and a few other improvements. For Sakura, I'm going to say that she learns Hail, Water Dragon, and Purify. Purify would be linked to her medical training, which she is still pursuing in her own time. There are a lot of times where you need clean water to tend to injuries, but on the road you might not have access to properly clean water. Hail is to give her an offensive jutsu which would pair well with her strength and defense, since Hail covers a large area. And Water Dragon is a powerful jutsu which she is likely going to need facing a ninja like Kankuro. Though a small downside to learning the technique is that she can't really control it well, so she resolves to use it only as a last resort. She would also be improving her genjutsu and other healing jutsu in her spare time, as she's come to realize that she really clicks with these two styles. For Sasuke, I'm going to say that he learns the Chidori from Kakashi, but then learns to expand upon it from Haku. So not only does he have the Chidori, but the Chidori Senbone. He also learns the Phoenix Flower from his family scrolls. All the while, he's also training up his Sharingan as he feels this could be the deciding factor in his eventual match against Naruto. Now finally, Naruto. Her training is different right out of the gate. Since Jiraiya has a goddaughter in this timeline, I'm going to say he wouldn't let himself get caught perving on women. That's not the kind of first impression you want to make on a young girl, especially one you actually want to look up to you as a teacher. So instead of that scene at the bathhouse, Jiraiya instead just goes to Kakashi and asks him to introduce him to Naruto. After this, Jiraiya begins Naruto's training. However, since here Naruto never had the 5-pronged seal placed on her, the problem with the water walking and summoning becomes clear much faster. When Jiraiya forces Naruto into interacting with the Ninetales, that goes quite a bit differently. The moment Naruto hears the Ninetales' voice, she recognizes it as the voice that had been in her head back on the Great Naruto Bridge. She quickly puts 2 and 2 together and smiles at the demon behind the gate. "Hello, it's nice to finally meet you, Ninetales." The Ninetales huffs and gruffly says that the feeling is not mutual. If it weren't for the gate, he would devour her right now. He then demands to know why she's there, and Naruto says that while she'd like to stick around and chat, she's afraid they have a small problem right now. She explains to him that they're currently falling down a ravine and the walls are too smooth for her to stick to. "I don't want to die, and I don't think you want to die either. So, how's about an agreement? You supply me with your chakra when I need it, and I'll make sure that neither of us dies." The Ninetales actually finds this simultaneously amusing and interesting. He has to concede that he, indeed, doesn't want to die, and that she does have a solid argument. "Very well, child. I accept your deal." When Gaara tries to kill Lee, the events don't change much aside from Naruto not shouting and trying to understand Gaara, which really throws him off. When Gaara talks about what happened to him in the past, Naruto wonders if she would have ended up the exact same way without Sakura and Ino. Looking at him, she can't help but see a little boy lost and alone with no one there to save him. Gaara notices the way Naruto is looking at him, face devoid of fear but filled with an emotion that he doesn't know. It makes him uncomfortable. It makes him angry. He's about to attack them when Haku arrives, having heard about what had happened at the canyon and wanting to check on Naruto. When Gaara leaves, Haku turns to Naruto and notices the look on her face. He asks her what's wrong, but instead of answering his question, she instead asks if Haku can teach her any water jutsu. During training, Haku is eventually able to get Naruto to tell him what's on her mind. She explains that Gaara is not that different from her. If it weren't for Sakura and Ino, she could have just as easily have ended up just like Gaara. It hurts her heart how no one was there to save him the way Sakura and Ino saved her. So she wanted to save him now. She didn't know how just yet, but she was determined to save him. Hearing this, Haku smiles while shaking his head, amending his earlier thought on how Konoha would be lucky to have her as Hokage, while thinking of his own childhood. The whole world would be a much better place if people like her were in charge. For Naruko's training, she would learn the Water Senbon, Summoning, and Armor of Wind. Jiraiya would teach her this since she's going up against Gaara and would probably need some defensive jutsu. Now we get to the first round of the finals. For Shino and Yoroi, this wasn't done out of finding it interesting, but simply because Yoroi and Mitsumi were the only ones available, and I think Yoroi is the more fun choice. Yoroi's whole gimmick is that he drains the chakra from his opponents, and Shino's whole thing is that he has an entire hive/colony of beetles living inside him which feed off of his chakra. So for this battle, Shino would need to be very careful not to let Yoroi get close enough to drain his chakra, while also commanding his beetles to attack him. I think that this would still be a win for Shino, because I don't think that Yoroi can drain the chakra from the beetles. He needs to make direct contact with the human. So Shino would just need to have his beetles swarm Yoroi and pin him to the ground to pull the win. Next up is Sasuke and Tenten. Now this one would be a fun match. Not only is Temari a member of the Sand Ninjas, so there's already a bit of animosity there, but her element is also the same as Naruko's. This means that Sasuke would know how the wind element reacts to his fire and lightning elemental jutsus, because he's on the same team as Naruko and their team is a lot more closely knit in this timeline. He would be able to use Wind's weakness to his fire to his advantage and keep Temari on the back foot. He'd be able to use his new Phoenix Flower jutsu to surround her and prevent her from using her wind lest she blow herself up. From there, it's just a matter of Sasuke getting close enough to knock her out or render her immobile with Chidori Senbon. Now comes Sakura and Kankuro's fight. Going into this fight, Sakura would be royally pissed seeing as Kankuro had hurt Ino. So Sakura would not be holding back one bit. The moment the battle starts, she would bring up a handful of shadow clones which all charge Kankuro. Kankuro would be unimpressed, seeing the attack as sloppy and obvious, only to get smacked in the face by a haymaker, revealing it to have been a genjutsu. Bringing out his puppet quickly, he would then try using it to attack Sakura, only for her to use her hail jutsu, making him unable to get close to her. Deciding that he can always repair his puppet later, he would send it through the barrier of water, only for Sakura to use a water shield to block the attack. However, Kankuro still has a trick up his sleeve. While Sakura is temporarily unable to move, one of the puppet's arms slip around the shield and cuts her with a poison knife. Realizing what's happened, Sakura makes a hasty retreat, using hail as a cover. Once she's safely hidden, she makes work on extracting the poison, while Kankuro is looking for her. Due to her having more practice with healing now, she's able to get all of the poison out just before Kankuro finds her. Realizing that Kankuro is going for the kill in this fight, Sakura decides that she's going to need to take a gamble. Producing a handful of clones to keep Kankuro busy, she gets some distance before running through a long set of hand signs. Just as Kankuro realizes what she's about to use, it's too late, and Sakura uses her water dragon, which rushes at Kankuro and his puppet. The force of the pillar of condensed water hitting them knocks Kankuro off his feet. It's also the last straw for the already damaged puppet, which breaks apart. Sakura sweats with the strain of keeping the dragon under control, releasing it when she feels her hold starting to slip. Breathing heavily, she looks to where Kankuro is lying unconscious after having been slammed into a wall by the dragon. The announcer declares her the winner and she looks up at Ino in the stands. Grinning, Sakura gives her friend a big thumbs up before promptly passing out from exhaustion. Finally, we come to Naruko vs Gaara. As Naruko is heading down to the arena, she is stopped by Sasuke and Sakura, who has recovered from her fight. They each give her their own brand of encouragement. Sakura tells Naruko to be careful, and that if she thinks Gaara might kill her, there's no shame in forfeiting. While Sasuke tells her not to lose, because she's still the one he most wants to fight. The moment Naruko smiles at them, they know something's up. It's not her reassuring smile, nor her confident one. This smile was warm, but it also held a twinge of sadness. Walking past them, she tells her two teammates that she's sorry. To Sakura, she says that no matter what, she can't forfeit this match. And to Sasuke, she says that out of everyone here, he's the one she most wanted to fight as well. But right now, there was something else she wanted to do more. But she promises to not die. Stepping onto the field, Naruto prepares for the biggest fight of her life.
Chapter 7. The Power of Kindness. Stepping onto the field, Naruto comes face to face with Gaara. Pushing down her sadness and nerves, she gives him her best smile. The one that she reserves for friends when they're feeling sad or upset. We meet again! I hope you're feeling better, Gaara. Gaara says nothing, just staring at her with confused and suspicious eyes. Naruto knows that words won't be enough to get through to him. They weren't enough for her when she was alone and hurting. If she's going to save Gaara, she's going to need to use her actions. The moment the announcer starts the match, Gaara sends out sand to attack Naruto. But before it can reach her, Naruto activates her armor of wind, which shreds the sand as it makes contact with it. With her defenses now up, Naruto makes her water senbon, throwing them not at Gaara but at the sand, hoping to use the water to weaken and slow it. Not once does she aim an attack at Gaara directly. Frustrated and more confused than ever, Gaara throws more sand at her than even her armor can carve away. With the sand closing in on her, Naruto hears Kyuubi's voice talking in her head. If you need help with the Chukaku, you know we still have a deal. I'm not killing Gaara, Ninetales. Fool! You're going to get yourself killed at the rate you're going. Don't worry. I already promised, no matter what, I won't die. Stubborn girl. Fine. The deal was that you get my chakra when you need it. There weren't any conditions on how you get to use it. Thank you, Ninetales. With the Kyuubi's chakra flowing through her, Naruto's armor gets a boost of power, shredding the sand that was just about to engulf her. Gaara feels cold dread in the pit of his stomach. This girl also had a beast inside her, and it was stronger than his own. Up in the stands, Hiruzen is about to call the match to a halt, not wanting to risk the Ninetales going on a rampage, only for Haku to place a gentle hand on his shoulder. Hokage, please, don't interfere. Naruto wants to help that boy, and I believe she can, but only if you don't stop her before she can even start. Sighing, Hiruzen agrees to let the match continue for now, but still sends the higher rank ninja to clear out the civilians and be ready if things get out of hand. Back in the ring, Naruto rushes at Gaara, who brings up his sand dome to shield him. Not breaking his stride, she throws a kunai with an explosion tag, the pointed end sinking an inch into the sand before firing a wind bullet. The explosion does nothing to hurt Gaara but opens a hole in the sand, which is just what Naruto was hoping for. As the hole is closing up, she switches into a kitten me and jumps through the hole just before it closes. Now inside of Gaara's shield, she takes her real form. Gaara prepares to skewer her when a pair of warm arms wrap around him, pulling him into a hug. It's okay, Gaara. Gaara struggles to get out of the hold, using his sand to cut at her, not knowing if he could do anything more permanent with her this close. Naruto ignores the cuts littering her body as she continues to hold Gaara the same way Ino and Sakura would hold her whenever she cried as a kid. It's okay. You can cry, scream, yell, hit me, whatever you need. I'm not going anywhere. Slowly, the sand around them stops thrashing. Gaara's arms slowly raise as he returns the embrace, his whole body shaking in silent sobs, though he doesn't shed any tears. Naruto smiles tiredly as she rubs his back comfortingly. In the dark of the sand dome, where no one else can hear or see, she lets Gaara fall apart in her arms, comforting him like a big sister. Even as her consciousness fades, she still doesn't let go. Outside the dome, the ninja gathered wait with bated breath, unsure of what is happening inside. After several minutes, the sand melts away, revealing Gaara kneeling on the ground while holding an unconscious Naruto. For a few minutes there's silence, many thinking that Gaara may have killed the blonde. But just as the announcer is about to stammer out a call of Gaara's victory, Gaara raises his hand and forfeits the match. While the arena is in shocked silence, he picks up Naruto and carries her over to the medical ninja, saying that she passed out from chakra exhaustion. With Naruto now being looked after by the medical ninja, Gaara makes his way to the box where the Hokage is. Arriving at the box while everyone is still in shock, Gaara is able to throw up a wall of sand between Hiruzen and Orochimaru before the Snake Sergeant can make a move. Gaara then tells Hiruzen a watered down version of the Konoha Crush plan, while not taking his eyes off the disguised snake. With his cover now blown and the Crush plan thoroughly down the drain with Gaara switching sides, Orochimaru decides to cut his losses and escape. In the ensuing battle, Gaara is approached by his other teammates who ask him what he's doing. Gaara simply says that this village is that girl's home, and he won't allow it to be destroyed. Not knowing what else to do, Temari and Kankuro join the fight on Konoha's side, working to capture as many of their former allies as they can. Meanwhile, Gaara and Haku work together to protect Hiruzen, while also trying to capture Orochimaru. When Hiruzen is about to attempt the Reaper Death Seal, Gaara stops him, saying that he can't allow the Hokage to die, not even to kill an enemy. He then tells Hiruzen to leave Orochimaru to him and the Cold One. With Gaara using his sand and Haku using his ice, they successfully block Hiruzen from entering the battle, at least for a while. They then work together to try and take Orochimaru and the newly arrived Kabuto out. However, the two do still manage to escape, but not before Gaara is able to crush one of Orochimaru's arms with his sand and Haku is able to skewer the other one with his senbone. After the battle, Gaara turns to Haku, noting that he's not an ordinary Konoha ninja. Haku chuckles at this and tells Gaara that he's right, that just like Gaara, he too was saved by a certain little blonde. While Orochimaru escapes with his higher level members, all those that were involved in the Chunin exams and a handful of others are captured. Sometime later, Naruto wakes up in hospital surrounded by Ino, Sakura, Hinata, Sasuke, Haku, Kakashi, and Gaara. Happy to see them, she sits up with a smile, apologizing for worrying them, before being tackled in a hug by the three other girls. The group tell Naruto what had happened after she passed out, making Naruto's mouth drop open before she turns to Gaara. Giving his hand a gentle squeeze, she thanks him for saving her village, to which Gaara just gives an awkward nod. They spend some time sitting in the hospital room chatting before Temari and Kankuro come to pick Gaara up. Temari gives Naruto a nod in greeting before telling her that Gaara had forfeited her battle and congratulating her on the win. After the Sand Ninja leaves, Kakashi decides that he should talk to the Hokage about what happened and drags Haku with him. They are soon followed by Ino and Hinata, who say that they need to check on their own teammates. Now that the teens of Team 7 are alone, Sakura and Sasuke are able to let loose on Naruto for putting herself in danger the way she had. Naruto defends herself, saying that Gaara was just like she was when she was little. She hated everyone and everything before she met Sakura and Ino. She was lucky. Someone had decided to save her. Why didn't Gaara deserve the same? Sighing in defeat, her other two team members let it go, knowing that Naruto did have a point. And if she hadn't decided to help Gaara, who knows what would have happened to Konoha? There's a quiet lull as everyone takes a moment to gather their thoughts before Sasuke raises his head. He'd been thinking about this for a while, but Naruto had trusted him with a very big secret when she told him about the Nine Tails, and Sakura was always proving her trustworthiness. On top of that, every time they came up against an enemy that seemed insurmountable, they somehow managed to make it by working together. Didn't they deserve to know? Taking a deep breath, he tells his teammates that there's something he needs to tell them. Slowly, Sasuke tells them about Itachi and the massacre of his clan. When he's done, Naruto and Sakura take a hand each and promise that they'll help him. Sasuke chuckles with a shake of his head, musing that things sure have changed since the days that Naruto resented him. Sakura asks what he's talking about, and at the panicked look on Naruto's face, Sasuke gives her an "I'll tell you later" look, before pointing out that Naruto used to pick fights with him all the time at the academy, so he just figured she held some kind of grudge against him. Later, when Naruto has fallen asleep, Sasuke tells Sakura about what happened on the bridge and Naruto's apology. Sakura sighs sadly as she runs her fingers through Naruko's hair. She then explains to Sasuke about the falling out she and Ino had had over their mutual admiration of Sasuke and how they had essentially abandoned Naruko. With everything that Sasuke has learnt about Naruko, he's starting to paint a picture of everything that Naruko has been through and how it's affected her. And some of it, such as the village's constant treatment of her, he can't say he likes. Though he is glad to finally know the reason behind all of their fights growing up. The next day, they are told that the Chunin exams are being postponed until those that were involved in the Konoha Crush plan are dealt with. They also find out about Lee's condition. While Naruko is in hospital, while no one is visiting her, she starts to talk with Kyuubi, thanking him for helping her with Gaara and asking if he has a name. Surprised at the question, he answers Kurama. Kurama. Well, Kurama, you better get ready, because just like Haku and Gaara, I'm going to be coming for all the negative feelings in your heart too. Tch, you just don't know when to quit, do you, brat? On the day that Naruko is discharged from the hospital, she is approached by Jiraiya, who asks if she'd like to come with him to look for an old friend of his. He tells Naruko that his friend is a talented medical ninja, and that if anyone can heal her friend Lee, it'd be her. Naruko is enthusiastic over the idea of helping Lee, but she does have one condition to accompanying the sage. She wants her teammates to come with. Jiraiya is hesitant. After all, the point of bringing Naruko along was so he could get some time to get to know his goddaughter better and teach her some more. But he's been around long enough to know that the Genin of Team 7 are as thick as thieves. So, begrudgingly, he agrees to take them along. After informing Sasuke and Sakura of the trip, the four leave the same day after Sasuke and Sakura need to stop Naruko from packing her entire apartment and remind her to pack light. Chapter 8 Itachi.
As Naruko and her team are leaving the village, on the other side, two cloaked figures are entering it. As Itachi and Kisame are taking seats in a tea shop, a crow flies into Hiruzen's office. As the third sees the crow, he smiles as a genjutsu takes form. Looking up, he comes face to face with an illusion of Itachi, whom he greets warmly. At Itachi's question as to where Sasuke is, Hiruzen reassures him.
There is no need for you to worry. Sasuke left the village earlier today with his team for a short training trip.
Hearing this, Itachi relaxes before telling Hiruzen what he's learned about the Akatsuki that he joined. After hearing Itachi's report, Hiruzen sighs and comments that he's getting far too old for all of this. To which Itachi, half-jokingly, suggests that he should start looking for a successor. With his report made, Itachi takes his leave, saying that he and his partner had been assigned to try and capture Naruko. As the genjutsu dispels, Hiruzen sighs, knowing that he won't be able to catch Itachi. All he can do is hope that Naruko's friends will be able to protect her from the Akatsuki. Like in canon, Kisame and Itachi are confronted by Asuma and Kurenai. Since Kakashi was already going to the area to look for flowers, it's still possible that he would notice the two suspicious figures. He was an Anbu after all. From there, the battle goes about the same until Itachi attempts to stab Kakashi in the back. Just as Itachi is about to sink his kunai into the back of Kakashi's water clone, he is forced to jump back and away as a series of senbon come flying at him. Emerging from the water, Haku apologizes to his comrades for taking so long to get there, subtly chastising Kakashi for not coming to get him. Kakashi is about to ask how Haku knew that they needed help when Kisame calls over.
Wait, aren't you Zabuza's little pet?
Hello, Kisame. I'd love to catch up, but I'm afraid the ones you were attacking just now are my friends. Don't worry, I promise to make it quick. Haku then turns to Kakashi and tells him that he'll handle Kisame with Azuma, while Kakashi takes on Itachi. Kisame was an old friend of Zabuza's, so it was only right that Haku killed him in his teacher's stead. Sadly, the fight with Kakashi goes the same, so let's focus on Haku's fight. Since Haku was trained by Zabuza and had been in his care when he was still one of the ninja swordsmen, Haku would know all about the other 6 swords and how they work. So he would know all about Samehade being sentient and eating chakra. This means that Haku can't call on his mirror prison, as Samehada would just eat through the chakra sustaining it.
While he was never the strongest ninja in the world, this is one fight where physical attacks and skill are going to be needed. After giving Asuma a quick warning about Samehada's abilities, the two begin a tag team attack on Kisame, with Haku trying to pierce the shark-like ninja with the senbone while Asuma tries cutting him with his knives. None of their attacks are able to land due to Kisame blocking them with Samehada, but thanks to Haku's speed, neither he nor Asuma are hurt. Haku points out that this was always Kisame's biggest problem. He was strong and could crush cement with his pinky, but he was slow and had the subtlety of a bull in a china shop. This causes Kisame to laugh, surprised that the once quiet kid that would follow Zabuza around like a duckling was capable of smack talk. Just as it looks like the battle is about to be a drawn-out stalemate, a blur of green rushes Kisame with a shout of "Leap Hurricane!" Kisame is sent skidding across the water while my guy stands beside Haku and Asuma. Thanking the flashy shinobi for his help, Haku quickly rushes over to Kakashi, catching him just before he sinks below the water. Just as Kisame is about to take on Guy, Itachi calls a retreat, saying that they didn't come here to start a war. Besides, they still had work to do. Over with Jiraiya and the Genin, Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura are all talking about what they had learnt during their Chunin exam training. The most obviously excited is Naruto, of course, but Sasuke and Sakura are also enthusiastic. Sasuke really likes the idea of learning summoning, though he would prefer something a little more dignified than a toad. Sakura was interested in learning the water senbone, as she did want to learn it during her training with Haku, but had simply run out of time. And Naruto is extremely excited over the idea of learning the Chidori, as it was a very flashy and powerful jutsu. Watching the three Genin talk and excitedly explain how their jutsus work, Jiraiya can't help but smile. It was extremely rare to find ninjas so willing to share what they learnt with others. The Sanin had been really close back when they were young, but even they didn't share what they knew the way these three now did. For them to be so willing to share all of their secrets with each other, there had to be an insane amount of trust between them. Back over with the Jonin, they have just gotten Kakashi into bed when Haku asks what Itachi and Kisame had even been after. There's a moment of silence while everyone in the room debate whether or not to tell Haku about them being after Naruto. The decision is taken out of their hands, however, as the ninja from Canon barges in. Then, just like Sasuke did in Canon, Haku races out of the room and through the streets, leading to the village's exit. From there, he starts to put all of his training as an assassin to use, quickly catching onto the trail that the Sanin and Genin had left. He had already lost Zabuza. He refused to lose any of his new family. Back over with Jiraiya and the Genin, they have just arrived at the hotel that Jiraiya was planning on them staying at, and, just like in Canon, the beautiful woman catches his eye. Here, however, as he's trying to maintain Naruto's positive image of him, he tells Naruto that he thinks the woman might know something about his old friend before giving her the room key. He tells the three Genin to go up to their room and try to practice the jutsus they had wanted to teach each other. He also tells them not to blow up the room before racing off after the woman, leaving Naruto thoroughly confused. Behind her, Sasuke and Sakura quietly debate if they should actually explain what just happened before deciding against it. Up in their room, Sasuke starts trying to teach Naruto how to summon a Chidori, while Sakura starts practicing the water senbone that she had started forming. While Sakura is able to form something resembling a senbone despite the water not holding its shape well at all, Naruto isn't even able to get any sparks to form. After a few minutes of this, their attention is drawn by a knock at the door. Thinking that it's Jiraiya, Naruto gets up and opens the door, only to be greeted by a pair of Sharingan. Naruto stands there frozen in shocking confusion. Sasuke's story of the massacre of his clan echoes at the back of her mind as she stares up at the man before her. The realization of who he must be dulled to her shocked mind. Itachi. This guy had to be Itachi. She is quickly brought back to reality by Sasuke's voice calling over to her, asking who's at the door. Itachi's eyes flick up to the room for a split second at the sound of Sasuke's voice before fixing on Naruto once again. Of all the teams Sasuke could have gotten on, of course it had to be the same as the Jinchuriki. Swallowing around a nervous lump in her throat, Naruko calls back to her teammates, trying to keep her voice even. Sasuke? Sakura? You wouldn't happen to know a good exterminator, would you? It seems we have a few uninvited guests. Just as Naruko is about to grab one of her kunai, she feels a tug at the back of her jacket, and suddenly she's being pulled back into the room and away from a massive sword being swung at her. Heart racing, Naruko realizes that Sasuke must have broken her out of a genjutsu and thanks her friend for the save. Sasuke just gives a nod, not taking his eyes off the two cloaked men in the doorway. What's wrong, Sasuke? Too worried about your little girlfriend to fight? Sasuke ignores the taunt. Losing his head won't do any good, especially with Naruko and Sakura there. He knew he wasn't strong enough to beat Itachi yet, and he wasn't about to risk his teammates in a stupid attempt. The best shot they had was to retreat and get help. In a voice barely above a whisper, Sasuke asks Naruko if she has any of his smoke bombs. Quickly catching on, Naruko throws several at the door, clouding the men's view before all three Genin jump out of the nearby window. Unfortunately, the smoke doesn't create as much of a diversion as they were hoping, and Itachi and Kisame are hot on their heels. Jumping from roof to roof, the three Genin try to escape their pursuers. Before they get too far from the hotel, Sasuke tells Sakura to find Jiraiya while he and Naruko hold off the missing Nen. Sakura nods, pivots, and drops down between two buildings before doubling back to look for Jiraiya. Just as Kisame is about to go after her, Itachi reminds him that their goal is Naruko. A fight with a Sanin was not something they needed today. As Sasuke and Naruko enter a nearby forest, Sasuke tells Naruko to create a clone, saying that they'll leave a pair behind to distract the two pursuers. Naruko agrees and creates a clone, while Sasuke does the same. Once Sasuke and Naruko stay behind while the others continue on. What Naruko doesn't know is that the Sasuke with her was the clone, while the real Sasuke stayed behind. His plan was to use himself as a distraction, allowing Naruko to get somewhere safe, but he knew that Naruko would never agree to leave a friend behind, so he had to trick her. They'd used the clone decoy enough times by now that Naruko wouldn't even question Sasuke suggesting it. Unfortunately, while Kisame stops, Itachi does not. Sasuke curses, realizing that Itachi must have been able to see through the shadow clone with his Sharingan. He's about to go after Itachi when Kisame stops him, poofing the clone in the process, telling Sasuke that he won't be going anywhere. Just as the two are about to fight, a series of senbon come flying out of the trees right at Kisame, which he blocks. Jumping down from one of the trees, Haku stands between Sasuke and Kisame. Not taking his eyes off the shark, Haku tells Sasuke to go protect Naruko. Not needing to be told twice, Sasuke runs after Itachi and Naruko. Naruko jumps from tree to tree, trying to keep ahead of the Uchiha chasing her. In her head, she keeps repeating every swear word she knows. The Sasuke clone had been poofed by a shuriken that Itachi had aimed at her and the clone shielded her from. She wanted to go back and help Sasuke, who now must be all alone with that crazy shark. She also wants to throttle him for tricking her into leaving him behind like that. For Kami's sake, they were a team! They were in this together! Just as Naruko is about to land on another branch, a kunai sinks into her leg, causing her to scream in pain and go toppling out of the trees into a small clearing. Just as she's about to hit the hard ground, Sasuke bursts out of the trees, catching her. Glaring at her friend, she tells him that if they make it out of this, she's going to kill him. Shaking his head, Sasuke puts her down so she can pull the kunai out of her leg. Turning to Itachi, the two prepare to fight for their lives. Back over with Kisame and Haku, they are staring each other down, sizing each other up. Haku knows he can't beat Kisame on his own, but he can't just let him hurt Naruko. Kisame, on the other hand, is wondering why Haku is protecting these leaf brats. Last he checked, Haku didn't care about anything but Zabuza. Speaking of, where was Zabuza? More important, where was his sword? Hey Frosty, I forgot to ask earlier. Where's Zabuza? He's gone. Gone? He died some months ago. His sword was buried with him. This is obviously a lie, but Haku isn't about to tell Kisame that he has the sword in one of the scrolls he carries with him. He already has someone to give it to in mind. Just as Kisame is about to demand more information, Sakura arrives with Jiraiya. Seeing the Shark Man, the two ask Haku where Sasuke and Naruto are. Haku explains that he sent Sasuke ahead to help Naruto, who was still being pursued by Kisame's partner. Sighing, Jiraiya realizes that Naruto and Sasuke are going to need to hold out for a little while, because if he just left Haku and Sakura to deal with Kisame, they'd surely be killed. And he wasn't about to have that on his conscience. Chapter 9. Brothers. Sasuke and Naruto stare down Itachi as he emerges from the tree line. As much as Sasuke wants to rip his head off, he knows that he's just not at that level yet. Even with Naruto's help, it would likely be a struggle to hold him off. Their best bet was to hold out long enough for Haku, Sakura and Jiraiya to catch up. Turning to Naruto, he asks if her leg is okay, to which she nods, Kurama's chakra having already healed it. Just as Itachi is thinking of making a move, Naruto produces a variation of her wind armor large enough to cover both her and Sasuke. Then they form their respective elemental senbone. Itachi is surprised and quite impressed that they each have their own elemental senbone, as that was not an easy technique. The idea to put up an armor of wind large enough for both of them was also a smart move, but it would take a lot of chakra. Their goal was clearly to stall for time, but he could just as easily do the same, and wait for their chakra reserves to run out. Over with Haku, Sakura and Jiraiya, Haku is explaining to his two friends about Kisame's Samehada, and the guy's general disposition of being a fight-happy typhoon. While they're talking, Kisame is remembering Itachi's comment about how a fight with a Sanin was the last thing they needed. He debates whether he should just leave, but quickly decides against it, as that would mean letting these three go to back up the Nine Tails and Itachi's brother. He wasn't about to throw his partner under the proverbial bus like that. With his mind made up, and getting bored with waiting for the Leaf Ninja to finish their little talk, Kisame attempts to rush them, only for Jiraiya and Haku to easily dodge, with the latter carrying Sakura. Seeing his speed and power, and remembering Haku's warning about Samehada eating chakra, Sakura quickly realizes that her defenses are going to be like wet tissue paper in this situation. There was really only one thing she could think of to help. Still in Haku's arms, she leans into his ear and begins to whisper a plan. Back over with Sasuke and Naruto, the two had been trying to combo Itachi with their water and lightning senbone. But the annoying bugger just refused to stay still. Even Sasuke, the best shot on their team, was barely landing any hits. Itachi, for his part, is finding it very hard to keep a smile off his face. Sasuke is a lot stronger than he had expected he would be at this point in his life. The way the two teens work together, almost like it's second nature to them, makes him suspect that the blonde has something to do with that growth. Maybe the pinkette too, though without her there, he couldn't say for sure. After several failed attempts, the teens finally managed to get a water lightning combo off, forcing Itachi to stop moving as electricity surges through his body. Seizing on this chance, Naruto suggests to Sasuke that they blow his face off. Catching on, Sasuke and Naruto set off what is quickly becoming their signature collaboration of the Fire Bullet Bomb. Staring at the now fiery crater that had once been Itachi, Naruto raises both middle fingers with a shout. "That's for traumatizing one of my best friends, asshole!" Startled by the declaration, Sasuke is just trying to think of something to say when an all too familiar voice speaks behind them. "I fail to see what the grass could have possibly done." Before either of them could react, Naruto suddenly finds herself in front of what she had quickly dubbed Kurama's room. Standing there with her is Itachi. Kurama growls at the Uchiha, his eyes wary and full of anger.
"An Uchiha. You remind me of someone I really don't like."
"A pity. I imagine we're going to be seeing a lot of each other in the near future." With very little effort, Itachi destroys the bubbling form that Kurama had taken, before Naruto is suddenly yeeted back into her own body. Before she can get her bearings, Itachi grabs both her and Sasuke and throws them into some of the trees that surround them. Body screaming in pain, Naruto forces herself to her feet and realizes that she can't feel Kurama's chakra. She tries to call out to him in her head, but gets no response. Itachi had somehow severed their connection. "Sasuke? We have a problem." "I noticed. Now get up.
I thought you said that no matter what, you wouldn't die.
Back over with the others, Jiraiya is having a hard time figuring out what to do. The area was too open for him to use his Toadmouth trap, and he was pretty sure Kisame was strong enough to not get pulled into his crushing toad stomach. He didn't want to use any of his fire-style jutsu and risk setting the forest on fire, especially with Naruto and Sasuke somewhere in that forest. The best bet he had was the Dark Swamp, but even then he'd need to catch the Akatsuki off guard for it to work. As he dodges another attack, Haku suddenly jumps down next to him, throwing a series of Senbon at Kisame and forcing him back. Noticing the lack of Sakura, Jiraiya asks where she is, only for Haku to put a finger to his lips, before leaning in and whispering something into Jiraiya's ear. A big grin forms on his face as he tells Haku that he has something that'll keep Kisame from following them, but he's going to need time to get it ready, time that he and Sakura have just provided. Kisame charges the two ninjas, intent on slicing them in half, only to get kicked in the face by the pink-haired girl whose name he doesn't know. For a few seconds he's shocked. That kick had actually hurt. But then he starts to notice the telltale signs. You don't spend most of your time around an Uchiha without being able to notice the marks of a genjutsu. He breaks the genjutsu only to see a wave of Senbon flying at him. He isn't quite fast enough to dodge and block all of them, and so a small handful manages to lodge in his skin. Now that stung. But he has to admit that was clever. Back over with Sasuke and Naruto, they are now on the back foot, just trying to avoid Itachi and keep Naruto from getting caught. She's been trying to reconnect with Kurama, but it's no good. They're barely hanging on by a thread. That thought makes Naruto's eyes widen as she turns to Sasuke and asks if he still has his ninja wire on him. Sasuke confirms that he does, and Naruto grins. She can't believe she hadn't thought of this before. Ninja wire was Sasuke's go-to ninja tool. Grin still on her face, she tells Sasuke to make a massive web with the wire and use the Chidori Senbon as the anchors. Sasuke frowns for a moment before his eyes widen in realization. The ninja wire was metal, and the Chidori Senbon were large amounts of electricity concentrated into a tiny form. Jumping back, Sasuke does exactly that, creating an elaborate web of electrified wires spread over the entire clearing. Seeing the trap now laid, Naruto begins to use her water Senbon to try and get Itachi wet, while also herding him toward the wires. Seeing him right on the verge of touching a wire, Naruto tries to kick him into it, only for Itachi to dodge and push her into the wires. Naruto screams as bolts of electricity surge through her body, rendering her temporarily unable to move. Just as Itachi is about to pick her up, Sasuke dispels the Senbon before pulling the wire to wrap around Itachi. Pulling with all of his strength, he throws Itachi away from Naruto. Getting back to his feet, Itachi shrugs off the wires before looking at Sasuke dead in the eye. Before Sasuke can pull his eyes away, Itachi is pulling Sasuke into the same nightmare as in canon. Just as Sasuke is about to relive that horrible night, he hears Naruto's voice at the edge of his awareness, screaming at Itachi to get away from him. Hearing that scream and knowing Naruto, Sasuke is able to figure out that she must be rushing the older Uchiha in an attempt to protect him. He wants to call out to her to stop, to just run, but he knows it's no use. Then, the sound of Naruto's screams of pain fill his ears, and his vision clears. The nightmare broken by the sound of an even worse nightmare. Looking in the direction of the scream, Sasuke's eyes widen and he feels the need to throw up at the sight before him. Not 2 feet away, Itachi is holding Naruto up by a bright orange jacket. In his other hand is a kunai, stabbing Naruto right through the neck. Pulling the kunai out, he lets Naruto go and she falls to the ground in a lifeless heap. Sasuke stares in broken horror as the lifeless eyes of Naruto stare back. Unable to stop himself, his mind runs through all of his memories of Naruto. From their childhood arguing and fighting, to them becoming a Genin team and the Bell test. Of when Naruto so willingly put herself in the line of fire to protect him. The last memory that echoes through his mind is one of only a few minutes ago, of Naruto sticking up 2 middle fingers at a burning crater and calling him one of her best friends. He would never be able to tell her that the feeling was mutual. Anger and hatred flooding his veins, Sasuke charges at Itachi, screaming that he would never forgive him for this. Itachi catches the sloppy attack from his weakened brother easily, and lifts him up by the wrist in his hand. Looking at Sasuke's eyes, he can see that they've morphed into the Mangekyo. Smiling, Itachi pulls Sasuke into a genjutsu, revealing to him the truth of the Uchiha massacre, of the planned coup, Shisui, Danzo, and the Third. He even shows Sasuke the Akatsuki's plan to capture all of the Jinchuriki, though he leaves out Madara. Sasuke isn't ready for that one yet. Once it's done, he pulls Sasuke into an illusion of the training ground they'd always practiced at together. Sasuke's mind is reeling from all of the new information, but he can tell that everything Itachi just showed him was the truth. So you killed our clan to prevent a war. Sasuke growls as he thinks of everything that he's just discovered, more specifically about everything Danzo has caused. Not only was he responsible for the murder of his clan, but he was also responsible for the villagers' hate of Naruto. Every horrible thing that happened to those he cared about came right back to him. Before he can say a word though, Itachi breaks the genjutsu, bringing them back to reality, where Sasuke sees an unconscious, but very alive Naruto, cradled in Itachi's arms. Passing her over to a very relieved Sasuke, Itachi tells him to keep her safe. She's a good influence on you. I approve. Sasuke ignores the comment, telling Itachi that he still hasn't forgiven him. But he does understand. Nodding, Itachi turns to leave, but pauses. Turning back to Sasuke, he warns him that he'd needed to place a nightmarish genjutsu on Naruto to stop her attack. Neither of them had actually been placed under the Tsukuyomi, but it was a similar jutsu. He doesn't know what her nightmare was, but he knows it wouldn't have done her mental or emotional health any favors. She'll need her best friends when she wakes up. With that, he leaves, and Sasuke begins to make his way back to town, Naruto in his arms. Back over with the others, Haku and Sakura have been making themselves quite the distraction. With Haku's speed and senbone and Sakura's genjutsu, the two had been successfully keeping Kisame's attention off of Jiraiya. However, Sakura was beginning to feel her chakra reserves running out, and Haku was slowing, allowing Kisame to nick him a few times. But finally, Jiraiya shouts for them to get into the trees. Jumping away from Kisame, they get into the trees just in time to avoid the swamp of sticky mud that had become the forest floor. Cursing up a storm, Kisame struggles to pull his feet out of the mud while the Leaf Ninja make their exit. Pulling himself out of the mud, he's about to go after them when a raven lands on his shoulder. Muttering angrily, he storms off to find his partner. This was just not their day. Chapter 10: Blood Oaths and Bets. With Sakura, Jiraiya, and Haku moving at top speed, and Sasuke making his way towards them, it doesn't take long for the two groups to meet up. Relieved that her two teammates are alive, Sakura launches into a flurry of questions, asking how they got away and if they're alright. Sasuke isn't ready to tell anyone about Itachi just yet, so he tells them that Itachi had used the last of his chakra, placing Naruto in a genjutsu, and retreated. While no one believes him, a quick kick from Sakura gets Haku and Jiraiya to go along with it. They all head back to the hotel, where Haku decides to head back to the village, explaining that he hadn't exactly asked for permission before leaving. And besides, Kakashi would want to know that they're all okay. Later that night, Sasuke is still waiting for Naruto to wake up from the genjutsu. Sakura had attempted to stay up with him, but had fallen asleep due to chakra exhaustion. Sasuke is still awake, partly due to his higher chakra levels, but mostly because he remembers Itachi's warning about how bad the genjutsu was. After several hours, Naruto wakes up suddenly with a strangled gasp, her eyes glossy and unfocused as whatever she saw is still playing in her head. Cautiously, Sasuke approaches her, softly calling her name, half not to frighten her and half not to risk waking the others. When that doesn't work, he lightly touches her arm. The result is instant as she jerks away, her head whipping around to stare at him in terror. Sasuke has never seen that kind of look on her face before. Now seriously worried, Sasuke raises his hands in a placating gesture as he tries to tell her that she's safe and that whatever she'd seen was only a genjutsu. Naruto whimpers and curls in on herself a little. Shakily, she reaches out with her hand and takes hold of the hem of his shirt between her thumb and forefinger.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I don't know what I did wrong, but I'm sorry. Please don't go. Please don't leave me all alone. I can't be alone again. Please, Sasuke. Please don't go. Please don't go. Sasuke remembers what Sakura had told him about her falling out with Ino, and about how Naruto had been either isolated or ignored by almost everyone in the village. It made sense that her worst nightmare would be of losing the friends that she'd finally gained, of going back to the way things were when she was little. The image of Naruto standing alone while surrounded by people glaring at her with hate makes him want to punch something. Preferably Danzo. For now, however, he pulls out a kunai and asks Naruto to look at him. Once her eyes are on him, he makes a shallow cut in his hand, just enough to draw blood. Naruto's eyes widen in shock and she's about to get up to look for bandages when he closes his hand into a fist, forcing a little more blood out of the wound. Naruto, on this blood I shed, I swear to you, I will never abandon this team. If someone were to take me away, I will do whatever I must to get back. And if someone were to try taking you from us, I will not stop fighting until you are back with us. A single tear slips down Naruto's face as she launches herself at Sasuke, wrapping her arms around him and burying her face into his chest. With only some hesitation, Sasuke hugs her back. Unbeknownst to the two teens, Jiraiya gives a small smile before letting himself go back to sleep. Sasuke had this one handled. The next morning, Sakura apologizes to Naruto with tears in her eyes for not being awake when Naruto woke up. Naruto is also able to get in contact with Kurama and confirm that he's okay, much to her relief. During the next part of their journey, Jiraiya explains to the teens about who they're looking for and about her skills in healing. Sakura's eyes widen in awe and she wonders how much better her own healing jutsu would get if she trained under someone like that. Eventually, they arrive in the town that's having a festival. There, Jiraiya tells the three to enjoy themselves and tells Sasuke and Sakura to make sure that none of them spend all of their money while looking directly at Naruto. Naruto huffs while Sasuke and Sakura promise to be responsible and they go to enjoy themselves. During their fun, Naruto finds a stall selling omamori and decides to get one for each of them. Specifically, she gets the yakuyoke, the charm that is intended to protect one from evil spirits, bad people, accidents, etc. For Sakura, she gets one with a cherry blossom pattern, for Sasuke she gets one with a fire pattern, for Jiraiya she gets one with some cute frogs on it, and for herself she gets one with a cute little fox on it. Sasuke also finds a stall selling hair accessories and gets something for each of the girls. For Sakura, he gets a hair clip with a cherry blossom design, and for Naruto he gets a pair of hairpins with little flames, cherry blossoms, and a little fox on top. Meanwhile, Sakura finds a stall selling nice chopsticks and gets a set for each of them with matching case. For herself, she gets a pair with a simple but elegant bamboo design. For Sasuke, she gets a red pair with a white moon and star pattern, and for Naruto, she gets a pair with a cute frog pattern to go with her purse. After gifts are exchanged, they go looking for Jiraiya, whom they find in a host club talking to some women. When Naruto asks what he's doing, he leans in and winks. He tells the teens that he's gathering information, and that you'd be amazed at what hostesses overhear while on the job. Unlike last time, here he's actually telling the truth. Naruto gives Jiraiya his omamori, and the women start cooing over how adorable it is, asking if Naruto is Jiraiya's daughter and such. They crowd around her so much they accidentally knock her over, causing her to knock over a table with sake on it, which then splashes two men in coats. While Sasuke and Sakura help Naruto up and the women apologize for knocking her over, the men begin to shout that she ruined their expensive coats. From there, the same thing happens as in canon, with Jiraiya taking out the loudmouth men with a Rasengan, then buying all of the store's balloons. The next day, Jiraiya begins to teach the Rasengan not only to Naruto, but Sasuke and Sakura as well. Jiraiya was originally only going to teach it to Naruto, but after spending some time with the trio and seeing how they share all of their info and techniques, he's realized that Naruto would try to teach it to her teammates even if she was only just learning it herself. He'd much rather all three of them learn it from him than deal with that disaster waiting to happen. While all three of them are able to pass the first stage with flying colours, the second stage is where we start to see problems and the power gaps between the teammates start to show. Sakura, despite her best efforts, just can't get the rubber ball to burst or even get a hole in it. After many failed attempts, and even Naruto and Sasuke trying to help, she eventually has to accept that her chakra just isn't strong enough, or maybe she just doesn't have enough of it. She hopes that this will change in time as she gets older and stronger, but as she is now, a Rasengan just isn't in the cards. So instead, she turns her focus on helping Sasuke and Naruto. Sasuke manages to burst the ball first due to him having better focus than Naruto. When she's still having trouble, he remembers an old story he'd overheard Iruka telling her during one of his famous lectures. Borrowing a brush and some ink from Jiraiya, he paints the symbol of Konoha on Naruto's palm and tells her to focus on it. Soon after, Naruto is able to burst the ball, using so much energy that she's sent flying and burns her hand. Sasuke catches her and brings her safely to the ground, where Sakura immediately starts tending to her hand. Once again, Jiraiya marvels at how close the three are. Orochimaru does seek out Tsunade to heal his arms, which were skewered and crushed by Haku and Jiraiya respectively. However, as the confrontation goes the same, I'm going to skip it. When Jiraiya starts teaching Sasuke and Naruto the third stage, Sakura catches on quickly as to why the Rasengan needs to be contained, comparing it to the difference between lying on a bed of nails and stepping on a nail. One is a hella cool party trick, the other is hella painful. While they are at the casino, Naruto manages to win full purses for herself, Sasuke, and Sakura. While Jiraiya thinks that Naruto has good instincts, Sasuke and Sakura know that she's just got crazy luck. When they hear about the giant snake, Naruto recognizes the description instantly, explaining to the others about the giant snake that had tried to eat her when they were separated in the Forest of Death. Picking up the pace, Jiraiya leads the teens onward to find Tsunade. When they finally do find her, Jiraiya explains to the medical nin that they came to ask her to heal a young ninja in Konoha, which Tsunade refuses on the grounds that she's retired. Naruto pleads with Tsunade, explaining that being a ninja is everything to Lee. Wanting to get Naruto to shut up and drop the request, Tsunade begins insulting the path of shinobi and even the role of Hokage. The moment her comment of the Hokage role being a joke leaves her mouth, Naruto stands up from her seat. With eerie calm, she tells Tsunade to follow her. Leaving the pub, Naruto leads Tsunade to an abandoned area just outside of town, with Jiraiya, Sasuke, Sakura, and Shizune right behind them. Looking around, Naruto nods to herself before turning to Tsunade, who asks why Naruto led her all the way out here. Naruto holds up 3 fingers with the back of her hand facing Tsunade. 1. You refuse to help someone in need. Someone who has done nothing but help and uplift everyone around them. She lowers her index finger. 2. You've insulted the path of shinobi, and in doing so, you've insulted everyone that I care for. She lowers her ring finger, leaving only her middle finger raised. And 3. You've insulted the role of Hokage. Just one of these would have earned you a punch, but all 3? That's earned you a beating. And I'd feel bad if any of the buildings in town got wrecked because I forgot to hold myself back. Now, while Naruto does a bit better than her canon counterpart, this is still Tsunade. Naruto does manage to impress her with all of the tricks she's pulling out and how she's weaving them together. However, Tsunade is still out of Naruto's league, and she does still get knocked away with just a flick to the forehead. When Naruto gets back to her feet, Tsunade asks why Naruto is so protective of the Hokage title. Her protectiveness of her friends, Tsunade can understand, but why that? Because I'm going to be the first female Hokage, and the greatest Hokage in history. I'm going to show everyone that my friends were not wrong, and I'm going to use that title to protect everyone I love. As soon as she makes that declaration, Naruto begins to form her pseudo-Rasengan. This ends the same way as in canon, but with Sasuke and Sakura rushing over to check on Naruto, and pointing out that she'd contained it a lot better this time than she had just that morning. When Tsunade starts going off at Jiraiya, Naruto interrupts her. Hey, old lady! You're a betting woman, right? How's about a wager? Naruto wagers Tsunade that if she can complete the Rasengan in 1 week, not only will Tsunade come to Konoha to heal Lee, but she'll also take on Sakura as an apprentice. While Sakura is trying to pick her jaw off the floor, Tsunade is surprised at the girl's audacity. She decides to up the ante. If Naruko really can pull that off, not only will she take on Sakura as an apprentice and heal her friend, she'll also give Naruko her necklace. However, if Naruko fails, Tsunade will get all of Naruko's money and the hairpins that Sasuke gave her, which she's been wearing in her hair ever since she got them. When Jiraiya goes for a drink with Tsunade, he tells her about how close the three genin are, including how they share all of their jutsu with each other. This completely shocks her, making her choke on her sake. He also tells her that the hairpins were a gift from Sasuke, and that she hasn't stopped wearing them ever since she got them. Even though it was only a short while ago, he's pretty sure that they've become precious to her. He also tells Tsunade that if she puts the lives of those three at risk, he will not hesitate to kill her. Back over with the genin, Shizune is telling them the history of Tsunade's necklace, and just like in canon, this makes Naruko even more determined to win the bet. While Naruko trains the Rasengan, Sasuke and Sakura check on her regularly, making sure that she's eating and talking her through the problem she's having with containing the chakra. Even Kurama pipes up with his own commentary here and there. On the second last day, Sasuke asks Naruko how she'd been able to hold her temper when Tsunade crossed 3 lines at once. Naruko explains that she was actually using what Jiraiya had taught them during the second step and putting it into a different context. She was focusing her anger at Tsunade and trying to keep it from hurting anyone else. It also helped that Sasuke and Sakura were within range to remind her that she couldn't just let loose. Sasuke suggests that she try doing that again for this. Focus the chakra in a single point or direction while mitigating any damage to the surrounding area. He also reminds Naruko that she's always done her best work when she's thinking outside the box. On the last day, Naruko thinks about Sasuke's advice. Focus her attack at one point, and think outside the box. Think outside the box. Suddenly, the idea hits her and she creates a shadow clone. Then, building her chakra with the clone to focus it, she manages to create a proper Rasengan, which she uses to make a hole in the rock face next to her. Tiredly, she gives a whoop of joy before passing out, where she is then found by Shizune, Sasuke, and Sakura, who take her back to the hotel. There, Shizune tells Tsunade about the hole they'd found in the rock near Naruko. Tsunade lets out a small chuckle. She can't believe the kid really did it. Still smiling, she knocks out the other 3 in the room before leaving. There was something she needed to do. Chapter 11. United Against the Snake. The next morning, Shizune is woken up by a worried Naruko, who's already woken up Sasuke and Sakura. From there, things play out the same until everyone meets up, so for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to skip to then. When Team 7 see that Kabuto is Orochimaru's lackey, they're surprised, but Naruko is very excited, bouncing on her feet like a kid that's eaten way too much sugar while saying that she's wanted to smash his face into the ground since the Chunin exams. Smiling, Sakura and Sasuke ask if she's planning to keep all the fun to herself, to which she laughs. Of course not! A beatdown is always best with friends! Before they can even take a step forward, Tsunade charges Kabuto and, well, we all know how that goes. They turn back to Kabuto and Naruko says that before they beat the snot out of him, she has one question. Why did he enter the Chunin exams? Kabuto smirks, taking this opportunity to try and break the team's bond by using what he'd learned about them during the exams. He tells them that he was there to gather information, and he'd also gathered information on them as well. He tells Naruko that her incessant clinging to her team is fruitless, as they will eventually see her for the dead weight she is and abandon her. He tells Sakura that the only thing she has going for her is her intelligence, and even that is lackluster. He tells Sasuke that while he has potential to be one of the strongest ninja ever, his ties to the leaf are holding him back. If he continues to limit himself to that place, he'll never become strong enough to kill the one he wants to. This last one is to try and make Sasuke consider leaving the village. To his shock, however, all 3 genin are completely unmoved. In fact, they look unimpressed. Oh, sorry, was that supposed to upset us? Because if so, that was pathetic. Sorry, Kabuto, but it seems your intel is a bit outdated. Jiraiya-sensei, This guy is ours. Jiraiya's fight with Orochimaru doesn't change much, so we're going to focus on Team 7 vs Kabuto. The moment Naruto makes her comment, all three Genin are moving. With Naruto and Sasuke in front and Sakura bringing up the rear, they charge Kabuto. At first, Kabuto is completely unfazed. He's seen these three fight and the only one he considers a threat is Sasuke. But then Naruto disappears, only to reappear behind him. He's barely able to dodge the punch aimed at his head. There was no way she could be that fast. Quickly, he breaks the genjutsu he'd been placed under, just in time for him to see a fire bullet bomb aimed right at his face. On Team 7's side, Sakura is trying to control her breathing after using that genjutsu, while Naruto and Sasuke attempt to blow Kabuto up. The fire clears to reveal nothing there. Sakura is about to relax when Naruto tells her to keep her guard up, as the FBB wouldn't have burnt him to nothing that fast. Kabuto is hiding somewhere. The three stand back to back, with kunai raised, as they try to detect any sign of where the snake's lackey could have gone. Taking a risk, Sasuke activates his Sharingan and almost immediately shouts at the girls to jump. Reacting on pure instinct, the three jump away from each other as Kabuto jumps up from underground. While Naruto and Sasuke manage to get away, Sakura's left thigh is brushed by Kabuto's fingers, which is all he needs to sever the tendon. Sakura falls to the ground with a cry of pain, hands clinging her leg as she begins to frantically heal the tendon. Kabuto is about to finish her off when he's forced to dodge a handful of lightning and water senbon, which pass mere inches in front of his face. Turning to the other two Genin, he sees Naruto and Sasuke standing a little apart, each wielding their respective senbon. He'd forgotten they could do that. He examines their positions and sees that Sasuke is not too far from Orochimaru, but he needs to put more distance between him and Naruto. Thinking quickly, he instructs the free snake from earlier to crush the two with its tail. While Naruto and Sasuke dodge it without much problem, they are now separated, which Naruto realized had been Kabuto's goal. Calling on Kurama for help, she focuses their chakra into her feet. Using the chakra for added power and momentum, she jumps as high as she can. She nearly makes it to the top, but is forced to comically climb the rest of the way. Reaching the top, she's just in time to see Orochimaru's head on its creepy elongated neck aiming right for Sasuke. Sasuke! Behind you! Before Sasuke can react, Orochimaru bites his neck, placing the curse mark like he wanted to back in the Forest of Death. As soon as the snake's teeth are removed, Sasuke falls to the ground, writhing in pain. Calling Kabuto to collect Sasuke, Orochimaru turns his attention back to Jiraiya. Just as Kabuto is about to pick Sasuke up, Naruto is putting herself between the two of them. Kabuto chuckles in amusement at Naruto's stubbornness before drawing his kunai. He asks why Naruto is being so stubborn about this. It's obvious she can't win. Even with her whole team working together, they failed. In battle, there's no such thing as honor or courage. In an unwinnable situation like this, the only thing that matters is survival. If she keeps thinking with her heart rather than her head, she's just going to end up dead. Naruto glares at him and tells him to keep his pessimistic bullcrap to himself. Without taking her eyes off Kabuto, Naruto calls over to Tsunade. She tells her that she still owes Naruto that bad luck necklace of hers, because she won the bet last night, and now she's going to prove it. Smiling, she makes a shadow clone, prompting Kabuto to angrily charge her, thinking that she's mocking him by using the same trick again. Tsunade tells her to take Sasuke and run, to not fight Kabuto, but Naruto just smiles. Even as Kabuto's kunai sinks into her hand, it doesn't waver. Using Kabuto's moment of shock to her advantage, she grabs onto the hand holding the kunai, forcing him to stay still. I am Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage of Konoha. I promised my team that no matter what, I won't die. And I never break a promise. With that, Naruto begins to charge her chakra while the clone contains it, forming the Rasengan. But there was something different about this Rasengan compared to the one she'd made the previous night. Rather than just bright blue, this Rasengan was blue and orange swirling together in a harmonic dance. Naruko spots the orange coloration out the corner of her eye and sends a quick thank you to Kurama. She surges forward, slamming the concentration of both her and Kurama's chakra into Kabuto's stomach. Buckstar Rasengan! Harmonic Dance! Before he's blasted away, Kabuto grabs onto Naruko's jacket, channeling some of his chakra to tear the heart muscle and sever Kurama's ability to heal her. As this Rasengan had been fused with both Naruko and Kurama's chakra, it had done even more damage to him than in canon. Not enough to kill him, but he definitely won't be getting back up, or talking anytime soon. So Naruko did shut him up, so mission accomplished? As Naruko falls, Tsunade and Sakura, who'd just been getting back to her feet, rush over to her. Together, they begin to work on saving Naruko, while Tsunade directs Sakura on what to do. The two healers smile with teary eyes as Naruko lightly tugs on Tsunade's necklace and tells her to pay up. Meanwhile, Orochimaru had seen the whole thing from his place fighting Jiraiya. He's now realizing that Naruko is more of a problem than he'd first suspected. Not only did she have Sasuke's loyalty, which was already threatening his chances of getting the Uchiha to join him, but she'd also just proven that she had more potential than he'd given her credit for. It seemed the Forest of Death wasn't just dumb luck. She's too much of a threat to let live. Using the same tactic as in canon, Orochimaru attempts to kill Naruko while she's unconscious, only for Sakura to shield her with her body, taking the sword in the shoulder. She would have used her water shield, but she was too drained from the fight and healing Naruko. The glare she gives Orochimaru is the very picture of if looks could kill. Don't you dare lay one finger on my sister! When Orochimaru pulls back, taking the sword with him, Sakura falls back onto her two unconscious teammates. Lying on top of Naruko's stomach, she passes out from pain and exhaustion. Just as Orochimaru is about to try for a second attempt at Naruko, Tsunade decks him with a punch to the jaw. Shocked and confused, he asks why she's protecting these three brats. Tsunade turns to look at the three teens with a soft smile. I can see it now. These three, they're the future of Konoha. From there, the battle plays out as in canon. When it's over, Tsunade places the blue diamond necklace on Naruko and gently ruffles Sakura's hair. Smiling, she tells Shizune that she has a new underclassman. After having a good laugh at Shizune's startled reaction, she says that she's glad her new apprentice is a strong one. The next day, after everyone's rested and healed, they all stop in at the pub in order to get breakfast before heading back to the village. There, Naruko thanks Tsunade for not going back on their deal, saying that Tsunade had never struck her as the reliable type. She'd honestly expected Tsunade to run as soon as she found out she'd lost. In response, Tsunade pretends to get mad and pushes Naruko's head down with her hand on her head, loosening her forehead protected to the point it falls around her neck. Then, her touch softens and she ruffles Naruko's hair lightly before kissing her forehead. You're going to be a fine young woman one day, Naruko. In good cheer, they all make their way back to Konoha.
Chapter 12. Promise to Return.
At long last, Team 7, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shizune finally arrive in Konoha. To their surprise, waiting for them at the gate are Shikamaru, Ino, Hinata, and Haku. Smiling brightly, Naruko runs ahead of the group to greet them, giving Haku, Hinata, and Ino a hug each and giving Shikamaru a playful punch to the arm. As the rest of the returning party catch up, Sakura notices the thick pieces of cloth under Shikamaru's arm and asks what it is. Rolling his eyes, Shikamaru pulls out the cloth from under his arm and tosses one to each of Team 7, which are revealed to be 3 Chunin vests. He explains that it was decided that the finals wouldn't be continued after all. The results would be determined from what had already occurred. As such, with Sasuke and Sakura's display of ability due to taking down 2 genin with twice their experience, and Naruko's preternatural talent for turning enemies into allies, all 3 of them were being promoted to Chunin. Now, I'm sure you're wondering if Shikamaru made Chunin. Well, no. In canon, Shikamaru won one round and forfeited the second, even though he'd basically won. Here, Shikamaru forfeited in the first round because he saw dealing with Shino's bugs as too much of a hassle. So I'm going to say that Shino got promoted instead since he won both of the matches. Before Team 7 can begin celebrating, however, Haku reminds them that they still have some business to take care of. With that gentle reminder, the three newly promoted Chunin drag an amused Tsunade to the hospital, followed closely by their welcoming party. Even a reluctant Shikamaru who is being dragged by Ino. While Team 7 catch up with their friends and bring them up to speed on everything that's happened, Tsunade checks on her patients. The first one they would check on is Kakashi, as he would be needed to seal Sasuke's curse mark. After that, she goes to check on Lee, and yeah, that hasn't changed. When Tsunade meets up with Team 7, she explains the situation in broad strokes. She then apologizes to Naruto that she may not be able to complete her end of the deal. Naruto tells her not to count Lee out just yet. The next day, Kakashi seals Sasuke's curse mark, resulting in Sasuke being unconscious for a few days, like in canon. When he's finally up and about again, Sakura says that they're all overdue for a celebration. They've just become Chunin and they haven't been able to celebrate properly because of everything going on. Naruto very enthusiastically agrees, while Sasuke just smiles and goes along with it. They agree to meet up at Ramen Ichiraku that night and continue on their day. That night, while Sasuke is on his way to Ramen Ichiraku, he is accosted by the Sound 4. More than a little annoyed at the hold-up, he irritably asks who they are and what they want. After introducing themselves, the Sound 4 say that they're here to take him to Orochimaru. Sasuke's response? To give an irritated huff and try to walk around them. Yeah, no, not interested. Now piss off. Despite their shock at the outright refusal, the Sound 4 block his path again. Sakon asks when they ever said that it was his choice and is about to attack when Tayuya stops him. She tells Sasuke that Orochimaru can give him power. Enough power to kill Itachi. Again, the Sound 4 are at a loss when Sasuke turns them down. I made an oath of blood. I intend to keep it. Finally realizing that Sasuke isn't going to be swayed, the Sound 4 attack, intent on taking him by force. Knowing that he can't hold anything back for this one, Sasuke activates his Mangekyo. This allows him to dodge all of the Sound 4's attacks with relative ease. As he's only had the Mangekyo for a few days and hasn't had a chance to train it properly yet, he doesn't have Amaterasu or the Susanoo yet. So he's currently using the Mangekyo for the added maneuverability. This goes on for a while until a series of water senbon come flying at the Sound 4, forcing them to jump back into the blast range of a kunai embedded in the ground with an explosion tag. Now covered in dust, soot, and some minor burns, the Sound 4 look to the direction the attack had come from while Sasuke smirks. Posing dramatically on a nearby roof is Sakura holding another handful of water senbon and Naruto with another explosion kunai. Starting the party without us? That's not very nice, Sasuke. Not my fault you two are late. Jumping down to join Sasuke, the three teens prepare to fight. Now with all three of them, the fight is much easier. Not necessarily easy, but easier. With the various combo moves the three have at their disposal, they even manage to knock two of the Sound 4 out. Tayuya is knocked out with a Water Lightning Senbon combo, while Kidomaru is taken down by Sakura, sending her Water Senbon to vital nerves, similar to what Haku did to Sasuke. Since the Sound 4 are in Konoha, they can't fully activate their curse marks. I always got the feeling that Sakon activated his in canon to show off and make a point. He also didn't use it fully. I think this is because they were trying to avoid detection from the higher ranked ninjas, hence why they're not using it now. If they did, Team 7 would definitely lose. Anyway, realizing that they're not going to win without their curse marks, Jirobo and Sakon decide to cut their losses, leaving Tayuya and Kidomaru behind as they retreat. As they flee, Sasuke shouts at them to give Orochimaru a message. When the last of the Sound 4 report back to Orochimaru, they deliver Sasuke's message. If Orochimaru had really wanted Sasuke to join him, He really shouldn't have tried to kill his friends. Clearly, Orochimaru had underestimated Sasuke's loyalty and overestimated his drive to kill Itachi. Little does he know that Sasuke's to-kill list has shifted dramatically. Back with Team 7, they drag an unconscious Tayuya and Kidomaru to Kakashi, who takes them to be locked up. All throughout this, Naruto has not stopped grinning from Sasuke calling both her and Sakura his friends. Lamenting their ruined plans, Sakura suggests that they have a sleepover at Naruto's since it's the closest. Naruto happily agrees, and Sasuke goes with it because he realizes that he's never actually seen where Naruto lives. Upon arrival, Sasuke is immediately struck by how tiny the apartment is. Sure, it's only Naruto living there, but still, this was ridiculous. The next morning, they are woken up by a knock at the door. Still half asleep, Naruto answers it to see Hiruzen on the other side. Now wide awake, she invites him in and asks him why he's there so early. Hiruzen first commends the three teens for their capture of the Sound 4, explaining to them that their curse marks had been sealed and plans were being made on what to do with them. He then asks Sasuke and Sakura to wait in the hall so he can talk to Naruto privately, only for the blonde to tell him that she keeps no secrets from her team. Despite his hesitance, Hiruzen can't help but smile. It seems Kakashi and Jiraiya hadn't been exaggerating. He then tells the teens that he'd recently received a report from one of the village's undercover agents. The group that had attacked the teens on their search for Tsunade are called the Akatsuki. They're after the Jinchuriki, hoping to start another war. Upon hearing that the group are after all of the Jinchuriki, Naruto's mind immediately flashes to Gaara. She frantically asks Hiruzen if anyone has sent word to the Sand Village to warn them, and Hiruzen assures her that word was sent as soon as the report was made. As Naruto breathes a sigh of relief, Jiraiya walks in. He tells Naruto that starting today, she was going to be his apprentice officially. He then tells the teens of his plan to take Naruto on a 3 to 4 year training trip to try and get her to a place where she can protect herself from the Akatsuki. To his surprise, however, Naruto asks a completely random question about how many Jinchuriki there are. Not knowing how else to respond, he tells her that there are 9, including her. Naruto nods with a big smile. So that's just 7 more to warn. Understandably, Hiruzen and Jiraiya start trying to talk her out of this plan, as it would be painting a big target on her back. But Naruto is determined. She shoots back at the older men that this was not up for debate. If they refused to help, then she was just going to go warn them herself. These people were Jinchuriki just like her, and as far as she was concerned, that made them family. And she did not abandon family. She was not going to leave them to the wolves just so she could be relatively safe. And besides, if the Akatsuki were planning on starting another war, that meant that all of the nations were in trouble, not just theirs. The more Jinchuriki that knew to be on guard, the better. For a few moments, no one speaks. Hiruzen and Jiraiya really can't think of a comeback to that. Naruto did have a point, and both men were being distinctly reminded of Kushina. Sighing with a small smile, Hiruzen says that he'll start sending letters to the other nations to expect them. After the two men leave, Team 7 begins to talk about everything they've learnt and try to come up with plans for the last 2 members. Sakura is already Tsunade's new apprentice, so she'll probably focus on that while also learning as much as she can about Genjutsu. Sasuke, meanwhile, decides that he's going to learn as much as he can about his Sharingan while also training with Haku and Kakashi. A few days later, after Team 7, Team 8, and Team 10 had all attended a farewell party for Naruto that Ino had insisted on them throwing for her, they're all standing at the main gate in and out of Konoha along with Hiruzen, Konohamaru, and Haku. The little boy hugs Naruto tightly, telling her to be careful and to come back safe and sound. Ino and Hinata also give their longtime friend a hug and remind her to eat healthy and not slack off, which earns an eye roll from the blonde. Next are Kiba and Lee, who each get a fist bump. Then Shino and Neji each give her a handshake and wish her well on her trip. Choji hands her a small bag of snacks, telling her that she shouldn't forget to eat something tasty and not just healthy, earning a laugh at the dig at her 2 other friends. Haku pats her head and tells her to be safe and reminds her that if she ever gets in trouble, he's only a message away. Finally, she comes to Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura. Stepping forward, Naruko wraps her arms around all three of them as best she can. In a voice barely above a whisper, she thanks them for being her team, for always being there, and for having her back. The team hug for a few moments before they reluctantly pull away. As Naruko turns to pick up her pack, Jiraiya asks if she has everything. Quickly, Naruko checks that her omamori is safe around her neck, her hairpins are secure in her pigtails, and her new favorite pair of chopsticks is in her bag. Grinning, she nods to Jiraiya and they walk away from Konoha. Before it is completely out of sight, Naruko turns back one last time. I'll be home soon. I promise. And that, everyone, is the end of our story. I hope you enjoyed this little compilation. I'm Rune. See you in the next story.